homes. We got out a little late from our church service, so we had to eat fast. But I'm glad that you are here, and we don't want to delay too long because we have a lot of good information to get to. If you weren't here on Friday, on last night, we looked at, or Dr. Cafferky presented on genograms. And that kind of, if you've seen a family tree, that just kind of traces your, this is my father, my grandmother, great, but a genogram kind of is more descriptive of those relationships. And so as we learned about that, he dug into and explained the genogram of Abraham's family and some of the insights, spiritual insights, relational insights that were pretty profound from a story I think that most Christians are pretty familiar with, but looking at it from that perspective was very insightful. And then, of course, this morning we learned about rail meat, and so I'm excited to learn more about hear what's coming next. So let's have a word of prayer, and we'll begin. Heavenly Father, Lord, we're so thankful for your blessings. We're thankful for the relationships that you have put into our lives, the easy ones and the difficult ones, Lord. And I just pray that your Spirit would be with us now, be with Dr. Cafferky as he helps us untangle the difficult ones in particular, that we might have better relationships with others, that we might have a better insight to ourselves, and that we might, most importantly, have a better relationship with you. This is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
There we go. Okay. So you can spread out if you want, or you can come closer. If you don't come closer now, I'm going to ask you to do it later. We're going to have some little small group breakout sessions. So I do improvisational theater, so we're going to tell a story together. Oh, is there a possibility that Tyler stepped out? I was going to see if we could have a ranging microphone. Maybe not now. Maybe we'll do it later. Okay. So we're going to tell an improv story together. Once upon a time, there was a nurse named, what's their name? What? Mary, thank you. A nurse named Mary, and she worked at the hospital. What's the name of the hospital?
Eden Hospital.
What?
Eden
Hospital. So Mary worked at Eden Hospital, and every day when she got done with work, she would go to the grocery store to get some food, to make some food for her family. And tonight was Tuesday night, so she was going to the store to get some food to make what? Great, fine, tacos. Taco Tuesday. Get some food. And as she goes to check out at the counter, the conveyor belt is going, and the person in front of her is taking a long time, longer than normal, longer than necessary. What is this person doing to slow up the line? Paying pennies, yes. Trying to get all their change out. So the person in front of her is paying in coins, pennies, nickels, dimes, trying to pay all this. And it's getting really, really frustrating for Mary because Mary needs to get home to cook her tacos. So Mary mutters something underneath her breath. What does she say? What? I can't believe it. Yeah, I can't believe it. Whew. And she says, I can't believe it. She's talking about the person in front of her who's paying with coins, but the cashier is a new cashier. It's a cashier in training. And the cashier thinks that Mary's talking about her. So she starts to get even more flustered, checks that person out. When Mary comes, the cashier says something to apologize for what's going on, but she drops something. The cashier further slows down the process. What does she do? What does the cashier do to slow down the process? She miscoded something. That's right. Oh, I don't know how much this bagel was or these tortillas. There's no barcode on it. I'm gonna have to call someone. So she calls someone to get some help. Supervisor comes over. Mary's just getting more and more upset because she just wants to get out the door. Good news. She gets out the door, goes to a car. She backs up and gives a little love tap to a dog ram. It's not a big scrape, but just a little little hello. And she gets out of the car, looks, doesn't see anything. I got to get home. So she takes off home. About 10 minutes later, the owner of the Dodge Ram comes out. And it's their new vehicle. So they notice everything, right? And there's a little tiny smudge on the driver's side. They try and buff it out, and most of it comes out, but there's a little tiny scratch if you catch the sunlight right. This person is frustrated. So they back out. They get on the road, and they're gunning. They go to the freeway, and they're going fast. They cut someone off, and the person they cut off is surprised. They're in their Chevrolet Cavalier, the old car. And whoa, this person just cut me off. How dare you? Tries to, they give different gestures to the person who cut them off. This person driving the Cavalier finally gets home, opens the door. Can you believe what happened? She's really upset. And a dog, a little tiny dog, comes up to greet them, and what happens? We'll roll with it. Okay. Kicks the dog. And normally the dog is not kicked. The dog's not used to being kicked. So the dog, gets upset, kind of goes out to the back patio, and the adults try and go out like, it's okay, come back, come here. The person who kicked you was just upset. The dog is having none of it, digs a hole underneath the fence, runs to a nearby park, and some kids love dogs, some kids don't. So one child, there's a dog, goes to the dog, and what happens? He takes the dog home. And as he's carrying the dog home, the dog is realizing it's getting farther and farther away from its real home. What happens? Starts to panic. And as the dog starts to panic, it starts to scratch and claw, and then what happens? Kid drops the dog. So the dog yelps and goes back home, but the kid now has these scratches on their arm, right? And we don't know if it was because of the scratches or because of something that the kid ate. It starts to swell a little bit overnight. So the parents are like, the kid needs to go to school, but we should get this checked out. So they take the child to Eden Hospital the next day. And who's there to take care of the child? Mary. Okay, good. Whose fault was this? Mary's fault. Why was it Mary's fault? Okay. Now, did she carry it all the way down the line? Okay, so maybe she started. I don't know. Okay. Who else is responsible? The lady with the coins. Yeah, she was the one who started in the first place, right? That's where our story started. Okay. Who else could be responsible for this? The cashier. Okay. But who's responsible for the dog scratching the kid? Is the dog responsible? The kid's responsible for picking up the dog? Okay. So who's to blame for all of this happening, this problem falling back in Mary's lap? Say. Okay. What I hope you're noticing from this story is anxiety and upsettedness is spread from person to person, even if they don't have direct contact, right? The scrape on the Dodge Ram, Mary never saw that person. That person never made any eye contact with the person they cut off. And then the dog goes to this child. So there's all these connections, and anxiety is passed from person to person to person. I want you to think of anxiety as a hot potato that has staying power and doesn't disappear. Oh boy. The different sort of PowerPoint that's showing up over here. Let's give this a moment. So what we're talking about today is something called relational triangles. When there's three people in a emotional configuration, and there should be handouts. If you don't have a handout, please raise your hand, let us know. We'll get you a handout, because we'll be using that to understand what's happening in these patterns. I find triangulation to be the most important thing and the most interesting thing when it comes to relationships, because relationships can be challenging, they can be messy, and so we're going to learn how to not get sucked into other people's problems. That's our whole goal. How can we have healthy boundaries so we can support them but not catch their anxiety? Because if we catch their anxiety, then we are also caught up in the whirlwind. So by the end of this seminar for today, you'll be able to understand the formation, attributes, and dynamics of relational triangles. You'll be able to recognize your role and position in the particular triangle, and then at 3:15, we will finish this out. Can we turn this screen off for me? There's some other cool things going on over here, kind of unexpected. Great. Okay. So in this scenario, we have two kids, right? Looks like one kid is feeding the other kid some fruit. It might be dragon fruit. It could be like plums. It could be a triangle strawberry. What else is happening in this picture? They're helping each other. Okay, are they helping each other? One is helping the other. Okay, good. What else is happening? Someone has accepted the help, and what do we have over here? Someone's just eating. Okay. Now, if we saw this, we might think this is cute. Potentially, right? One person helping another. How nice, how generous. What happens if this pattern continues for a year or 2 or 3 or 4? What's going to happen? One becomes dependent on the other, and what do we say here over here? Yeah, dependence. This person on the right will become dependent on the person on the left. In some ways, this is a sweet setup, right? Your sibling, maybe your twin, feeds you whenever you want food, and the person who's feeding feels good about themselves because I get to feed my sibling. This is a sweet symbiosis. We're both happy, right? But if this continues, and the person on the right is never, so notice the person on the right still has some stuff around their lips. So it looks like this person on the left is feeding themselves and feeding their partner. They're doing double the work. Do we see that? So my 5-year-old does not know how to tie her shoes yet. She will eventually, but I know there's going to be some protest, some struggling, some crying, some upsetness, some throwing of the shoes. I know that's going to happen. And if I always jump in and I catch her anxiety and I always tie her shoes for her so she never struggles, she's going to be a senior in high school. Ring, ring, hey, Dad, can you come? I just got finished with gym class. Please come and tie my shoes. I'm going to be doing a lot of extra work to save her from the anxiety of dealing with her own tied shoelaces, right? Because success is built with the bricks of failure. And it can be unpleasant to experience some of that difficulty, and people want to be rescued from that. They want to be rescued from that. So let me solve your problem for you. This is important because if we have this point of view, please let me solve your problem for you. We're actually robbing the other person of the opportunity to learn and struggle and grow. Yes, during times of safety, it can be important, right? And if I see, let's say, a single parent drop some things and I might want to pick it up for the person, or let's say I'm in the airport today as I fly back and someone drops their wallet, am I going to say, this is your problem, I'm not going to help you? No. But on the other hand, if I'm always looking for people to help, I spend all my time at the airport trying to help people. A, they may not want it. B, I might miss my flight because I'm dealing with other people's problems. We have to figure out how do we be wise about this. So all the things be talking to you today, I'll be talking more as a family life educator and less as a family therapist. Why? Because when it comes to issues of safety and well-being, there might need to be some adjustments to the ideas and concepts and practical applications of what I'm sharing with you today. But in general, I'll be teaching what you can do in general when it comes to triangles. So, hero coming to the rescue at the top, accepting an invitation to get involved in other people's unresolved conflict, have no emotional capacity to handle my own business. Sometimes we get so caught up in catching other people's anxiety that takes an emotional toll on us that we don't have enough emotional capacity to handle our own stuff. And this can be a problem because I have much more fun packing other people's stuff into boxes when they're moving the house than I do packing my own stuff. Because whenever I'm packing my own stuff, oh, I got this book back when I was a sophomore in college, or, oh, I remember this shirt, I haven't worn this in a while. Oh, I forgot I had these boots. Last time I had these boots, I was working in the yard, to put the sprinklers in. So I have all these emotional attachment to these different objects. It takes Bryan a lot longer to pack his own stuff. I can pack your stuff like this, right? Get in there, put it in, tape it up, move it to the garage. But when it's my own stuff, it's a little bit more work. So sometimes we have more fun helping other people with their stuff. Now, I talked with Tyler before coming here. He told me a little bit about the church. And one of the things he said was that everyone was on the same page when it came to their favorite thing to talk about when it comes to families. We're all on the same page. So we're going to test that. So what I want you to do is take maybe 2 or 3 seconds. Think about your favorite thing to think about or talk about when it comes to families. So think about what that is. What is my favorite thing to think about or talk about when it comes to families? And on the count of 3, we're all going to say it out loud, okay? We're going to see if we're on the same page. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay, I heard in-laws, because that's what we're talking about right now. We're going to talk about in-laws. Did you know that in the Bible there is some in-law drama? Quite a bit, actually, and I'm trying to click through this. Here we go. So this is the story of Jacob's deception of his father Isaac. And luckily, whoever helped translate this described the story as Jacob's deception. And usually we start the story at the beginning of chapter 27. I don't know what happened. A little delay. Got to be a little more patient. And Jacob is there at present, and Isaac tells his son Esau, I want to bless you, and tells Esau to go out into the field and bring back some game. And Rebekah is listening in while Isaac spoke to his son Esau. So Rebekah, in verse 6, says to her son at the bottom, behold, I heard your father speak to your brother Esau, saying, so she comes up with this whole plan, hey, we're going to try and trick your father. But the beginning of the story happens actually a verse or two earlier. We usually see Rebekah as maybe this mastermind. She's trying to get her preferred son the birthright and the blessing. But there's actually another motivation for the reason why Rebekah is doing this. The reason is the previous 3 verses, or the previous 2 verses. When Esau was 40 years old, he married Judith, the daughter of Beri the Hittite, and Basemath, the daughters of Elon Hittite, and they brought grief to Isaac and Rebekah. The beginning of the story is not Rebekah hearing Isaac tell Esau to go and hunt some game. The beginning of this story is these daughters-in-law are bringing grief to Isaac and Rebekah. So the story doesn't start in chapter 27. It starts the last 2 verses of chapter 26. How do I know this? Let's carry on the story, and let's keep this drama in mind when it comes to the daughters-in-law. So Esau held a grudge against Jacob after the deception because of the blessing which his father had blessed him. And Esau said to himself, and in half of a verse he says this. It's actually one full line on the PowerPoint. The days of mourning for my father are near. Then I will kill my brother Jacob. One simple statement. My father's going to die. I'm going to kill my brother. Let's notice how Rebekah takes this one line and she catches that and she amplifies it into a huge deal. Let's look at the 6 lines she uses, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6, maybe 7 lines to describe the issue to Jacob. Behold, your brother Esau is consoling himself concerning you by planning to kill you, because that's what Esau said. Let's see what she does next. Now then, my son, obey my voice and arise, flee to Haran, that's Padamaran up north, to my brother Laban. Stay with him a few days until your brother's fury subsides, until your brother's anger against you subsides, and he forgets what you did to him. Then I will send word and get you from there. Why should I lose you both in one day? And then she turns to her husband, Isaac, and says, I'm tired of living because of the daughters of Heth. If Jacob takes a wife from the daughters of Heth like these from the daughters of the land, what good will my life be to me? So Rebekah is stirring up drama. Why? Because she wants a different daughter-in-law. She does not like the 2 daughters-in-law she has with Esau. She wants someone, I'm going to get some tingles, from her own family back in Padamaran who knows how to cook the way that who knows how to cook the food the way I like it, who knows how to follow the rules the way that I like it. I want someone like that. Sorry. There. Someone from my own family. So that's what this whole deception thing was about. I want to get the blessing for my favorite son because he already has the birthright. So for all intents and purposes, he will be the firstborn of the family. And then if I can just get a daughter-in-law that I like, I can live out the rest of my years in comfort. She does not like her daughters-in-law. So what happens next? So Isaac calls Jacob and blessed him and commanded him, saying to him, you shall not take away. See, it's all about who the daughters-in-law are. You shall not take away from the daughters of Canaan. Arise, go to Padamaran, to the house of Bethuel, your mother's father, and from there take to yourself a wife from the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. Very clear what the goal is. I need a different daughter-in-law. So in this Abraham family telenovela, that's what's happening here. Rebecca is having some difficulty with her in-laws. So she could have just prayed about it. She could have applied the Matthew 18 principle. She could have held a family meeting with Esau and the daughters-in-law. She could have agreed to disagree with the daughters-in-law. Instead, she convinced her favorite son to dress up in a goat skin to swindle the blessing from her legally blind husband and then scare Jacob out of town to obtain an approved wife from her family back in Padamaran. So did she deal with the problem directly? No. She caused a lot of drama, right? And because of this, she never got to see her favorite son ever again. This is difficult. I'm sure you know, maybe it's not in your family, but in other people's family, heard about someone stirring up drama. It's usually because of some unresolved tension. In this situation, it's unresolved tension with her daughters-in-law. How did Rebecca come up with this idea? I don't think she came up with this idea on her own. I think she was following a specific playbook. Here's why I think that. In previous chapters, when the servant of Abraham sent the servant to go and find a wife for Isaac, the servant comes, and he has a whole bunch of gold and materials, and he actually has some camels as well. So he comes, he finds Rebecca, and tells Rebecca what he's all about. Rebecca runs and tells her mother's household about these things. Typically, it's a patriarchal household, but in her family, it's known as the mother's household. This is different from what we typically expect, right? And then she tells the story. Now, Rebecca had a brother whose name was Laban, and Laban ran outside to the man at the spring, and when he saw the ring, so he saw the jewelry, and the bracelets on his sister's wrists, and when he heard the words of his sister saying, "This is what the man said to me," he went to the man. Behold, he was standing by the camels at the spring. The narrator is trying to tell us, Laban sees the gold, the bangles. He sees the camels, which is like a fleet of Teslas, and that's what he's interested in. So he says, "Come in, blessed of the Lord. Why do you stand outside since I've prepared the house and a place for your camels? Please let me take care of your fleet." So the man entered the house, and Laban unloaded the camels. He wants to put his hands on those goods. And he gave straw and feed to the camels. He's more interested in the camels and the jewelry way more than the servant, right? So we already have a clue, this is what Laban's about. He's about obtaining these things. And then water washed the feet and the feet of the men who were with him. So later on in the story, when there's a conversation between the head servant, he talked with Laban and Bethuel. Bethuel is the father of the family, and the father never speaks by himself. He only speaks once, and he speaks with Laban. "The matter has come from the Lord, so we cannot speak to you good or bad. Here's Rebekah for you. Take her and go and let her be the wife of your master's son, as the Lord had spoken." And the servant brought her articles of silver, articles of gold, gave them to Rebekah, and he also gave precious things to her brother and her mother. Notice a lot of the transactions is happening with the brother and the mother of Rebekah, but the father's not as involved. Later on in the story, but her brother and her mother, again, those two are together, said, so now Laban and the mother are speaking, "Let the young woman stay with us a few days. Say 10 afterwards she may go." However, he said to them, so that's the servant saying to them, "Do not delay me since the Lord has prospered my way. Send me away so I can go to my master." And they said, that's the brother and the mother again, "We will call the young woman and ask her." And they called Rebekah and they said to her, "Will you go with this man?" She said, "Yes, I will go." So they sent away their sister Rebekah. So who are the decision makers? The brother and the mother in this family. So it would make sense if Rebekah grew up in a family where the mother is calling most of the shots, then when it comes to a tenuous situation, I'm going to call the shots. So it may not be about Rebekah being the puppet master in the background. This is just how we do things. This is normal for her. Because the things we learn in our family of origin, we carry those same behavior patterns and the expectations and the rules from that family, usually into our family of choice. That's how we do things. So it's not like Rebekah is acting out of character. In fact, she's acting in character, right? And we know that Laban is a spinster and a trickster. So it makes sense that Rebecca's also that way because that's just what's happening in the family. Every behavior is a symptom of the system. And if we can learn how to detriangulate ourselves from other people's drama, we can learn how to protect ourselves. Detriangulating is probably the most important technique in family systems therapy. As a therapist, if I'm in a room with a couple or a family, they all want me to be on their side, right? And my job is to be as neutral as possible and supportive as possible to all of the families. When I'm not in therapy, it's easy for me to get sucked into other people's business. I'm much more aware of it, but before I went through school to become a family therapist, unbeknownst to me, I was repeatedly pulled in, roped into, wrangled into other people's problems. And I didn't even know what was happening. So I'm hoping to teach you what the patterns are, and by the end of this afternoon, early evening, you'll know this is what I can do so I don't get roped into other people's problems. All right, for those of you who like math, you can figure out how many triangles are in the room following these formulas. So 3 times 2 times 1 over 3 times 2 times 1. So if there's 3 people, there's only 1 triangle. Right? If there's a population of 4, there's 4 people, it's 4 times 3 times 2, and that's over 3 times 2 times 1. So if there's 4 people, there's a total of 4 triangles. If there's 10 people in a population, groups of 3, 10, there's a possible 120 triangles. If there's 300 people in a room, there's almost 4.5 million possible triangles. Doesn't mean these triangles are all active, it just means there's a lot of possibility. And if we can understand what's happening in our triangles, I am simultaneously in lots of different triangles with people all the time. Not all these triangles are active, but the possibility these triangles are active. Anytime there's a triangle, there's a possibility that someone's going to try and send their anxiety my direction. So let's look at 4 different scenarios of things that can happen in a family to understand how these triangles work. Here's the first one. Okay, on the left-hand side, there are 2 people, and the jagged line means there's some tension between them. So there's some instability between these 2 individuals. On the right-hand side, there's 2 people who are getting along with the red straight line. Do we see that? So on this side, 2 people are getting along. On this side, there's some conflict between them. The addition of a third party will actually change what happens between these 2 dyads. Watch this. On the bottom left side, let's say there's 2 people going to Sabbath school, and they have different ideas about theology, and they're having a conversation, and a new person walks into the Sabbath school with a cup of coffee. These 2 people who might disagree theologically both agree that coffee is bad. So all of a sudden, we have a common enemy. This person should not bring coffee into the church. So all of a sudden, they're in alignment. They're getting along better because we have a common enemy. On this side over here, maybe these two just had a baby. They were getting along fine, but as soon as maybe they adopted the baby. Baby came into the home. All of a sudden, they're spending more emotional energy taking care of the baby and less energy on their relationships. So the addition of a third party, a third person, a third baby, can change the way 2 people interact. Likewise, let's say there's 2 neighbors, neighbor on the left, neighbor on the right, and they're watching football. And one of them is a Niners fan, the other one is a Raiders fan. And they do not get along when they're watching the game because this is a big game between the 2 teams. As soon as the game is done, they can get along. But during the game, they do not get along. But as soon as the TV goes away, game is over, they start to be able to repair their relationship. If the clicker works, we're down to 1 bar. We need to put some more batteries. There we go. Then all of a sudden they can start to get along because they don't have something in the middle of their relationship. Likewise, over here on this side, maybe we have 2 strong personalities in a group. And there's a person who's leading this group, maybe leading a committee meeting. And these 2 strong personalities get along because they have someone who's a strong leader, a strong facilitator. But as soon as this person leaves, maybe they have to go to another church. They transfer to Maryland because of work. All of a sudden, when this person leaves, these 2 strong personalities have no one to keep them in check, so they start to have some disruption, some tension between them. So, the addition of a third party or the removal of a third party can affect what happens between 2 people. Thank you. This is important because most of us think about relationships as me and you. Me and you. It's just you and me. This is our relationship. But if we can start to see relationships not as twos, but as threes, we start to have a much broader and deeper understanding about what's actually happening in our relationship. Because there's always at least one, usually multiple, thank you, other parties at play. So regardless of whether the dyad experiences conflict or no conflict, the addition of or the removal of a third party can change what happens within that dyad. I know I'm asking you to have this paradigm shift, but this is super important. Because if you always think it's just you and the other person, and you're ignoring all the other outside people that are circling around your orbit, or these other influences, or other parties, sometimes it's not even a person, sometimes it's a career, or an addiction, or a hobby, or a dream, or an injury that are getting in the way, or disrupting, or improving relationship between two people. So if we can see relationships as threes, not twos, we'll have much better understanding of what's happening. And maybe you don't agree with me. That's okay. You don't have to agree with me. I'm going to have the rest of this time to keep convincing you, right? So here we go. Relationships about threes, not twos. Triangles are the basic building blocks of emotional systems. Is there anyone here who is an engineer or a construction worker? Yeah? Okay. Can you tell me about triangles? Tell me about triangles. Why are triangles helpful for building? So, what do you mean by support? Good. So triangles help reinforce structure. Why do triangles help reinforce structure?
There's different meanings to it, but based on how we understand it, is that the triangle, you can go in at a large scale and go into a smaller angle. When that angle meets, it can still have great support based on how the bottom is structured.
Are we hearing that? The support, the whole structure benefits from the structure of the triangle. Am I hearing that correctly? Same sort of thing when it comes to relationships. Triangles are the basic building blocks of relationships amongst people, amongst families. And if we can see this, this is helpful because the weight, the load of anxiety on our lives can be redistributed amongst the rest of the triangle. So we use triangles on a regular basis to help us because a relational triangle is a three-person emotional configuration when one relationship gets intertwined with the addition of a third object, party, job, dream, vision, hobby, addiction, whatever. And what can happen is there can be something called interlocking triangles, where I'm here in a relationship with two other people. I'm also in a relationship with two other people over here. So I'm in this triangle, and I'm also in this triangle. So these two triangles are interlocking where I am the common person, the common party between these two triangles. So in the story, the improvisational story we told earlier, we're having multiple triangles happening in the story as the anxiety is passed down the line. So when there's a two-person relationship and they experience some tension, they'll often reach out to try and get some help, some support, whether it's a shoulder to cry on, or someone to vent to, or try and find some advice, or maybe it's just find another scapegoat to present my unresolved tension. Because when there's too much tension in the dyad, that tension needs to go somewhere. That anxiety needs to spill out somewhere. And it often spills out onto another person. So what happens is distress in the dyad, unresolved tension between two people, is passed on down the line. And this new person, this new addition, acts as a release, an ally to support them, or a scapegoat. Regardless, they're catching some of their anxiety. So really, triangles are a multi-level marketing scheme where we are passing down anxiety from person to person to person. You have one person at the top who's trying to find more recruits, and those people trying to find their recruits to pass this anxiety on. And when this happens, triangles end up being this way that we don't actually get rid of anxiety, we just sweep anxiety around the room. When I have to clean my kitchen floors, I try and sweep it all into a corner, then deal with the dust. Imagine if I was just sweeping it around the counter over and over and over. It's not going anywhere. That's what happens with triangles. we typically just sweep all the dust and dirt around and around and around. Everyone has their brooms, and we're all just sweeping. And when you try and get involved in other people's business, to the extent that you become responsible for, or try to change the relationship of two others, the more you will experience the stress of that relationship. So the more I try and get involved in other people's business, the more I will experience their distress. The more I will catch their unresolved tension. The more I will experience in my body and my mind, the more I will be thinking about their unresolved problem. This is a little bit different from how most of us typically think, because sometimes we think, oh, there needs to be a mediator, right? To jump in the middle, to calm both sides down. Well, that mediator, the more they get involved, the more they will experience the distress of their relationship. So you have to be smart. How much am I willing to get involved? Because there's a trade-off, right? The more you get involved, the more you experience the distress of that relationship. Because triangulation is an anxiety management strategy. It's a way to try and manage our anxiety, which relies on other people getting involved in our unresolved distress so that we can start to feel calmer. Triangulation is a strategy to manage my emotional distress with the end goal of me experience more calmness. And usually we're trying to find other people to take the anxiety from us. That's what's happening. So if you're getting roped into other people's business and you're starting to experience some of their distress, what's happening is they are offloading some of their unresolved tension onto you so that they can feel calmer. Ooh, that was nice to vent. I feel so much better. Thank you so much for listening to me. Oh, I can sleep better. I can breathe better now. Well, you're carrying some of that now. If you've ever done me wrong, just know my mom knows, and she doesn't like you. Even if my mom has never met you, I've told her about you, because I have some unresolved distress with you, and she has formed an opinion about you. And she might ask about, how's so-and-so? What are they up to? Like, are they buying in their business, or are they getting up in yours? And because she is now invested, because she has got involved, I have invited her into our triangle, and because she's thinking about it, she's emotionally invested, she's experienced some of the distress of that relationship. Anxiety is like a hot potato. It's passed around, and nobody wants to touch a hot potato very often. When we're making baked potatoes at home, if I'm smart, I'll put them on a pan. If I'm not smart, I'll just put them in the oven. And if I'm really not smart, I'll reach in with my bare hand to grab a hot potato and try and go transfer it as fast as possible, right? If I'm smart, I'll have some sort of oven mitt to protect my hand. But sometimes I'm in a hurry. I'm just going to do it. And inevitably, I do one or two potatoes. Oh, that hurts. I go over to the sink, get my hand wet. I'm taking a lot of time to do this when maybe I should just grab tongs. Oh, I'm not going to touch this. This is not mine. Or who put this in here? Who's responsible for these potatoes to begin with? But the more we see anxiety as hot potatoes, the more hopefully you'll start to think, is this my hot potato? Or is this someone else's hot potato? Because we typically spend a lot of time handling other people's hot potatoes. In fact, most people in relationships are behaving in response to anxieties rather than to each other. They're reacting to the other person's anxiety, or they're reacting to their own anxiety. They're not actually reacting to the other person. Because the anxiety we experience drives us to see things differently, often sends us into a fight, flight, or freeze, or befriend response. We can't see things clearly when we're catching other people's anxiety. So triangling is both an emotional process and an anxiety binding process that just shifts or moves the anxiety around the system. Sometimes the triangles feel stable, other times they feel unstable. We'll talk about that this afternoon. And anxiety is always transferable and contagious. We are catching other people's anxiety. They're trying to send their anxiety our direction, and we are receiving that anxiety. So there's this domino effect amongst these interlocking triangles. Likewise, triangles are forever, and they can outlive the people in them. What do I mean by that? I mean that in some families, there are people who We blame for the drama that they stir up in the family. And we think if they just moved away or moved on, then we'd be okay. But triangles are forever. And when someone moves away or passes away, that unresolved tension does not pass on or move on with them. It just gets redistributed amongst the rest of the remaining family members. And when someone passes away in the family, you will see shifts in the family because now there's more anxiety and it has to be redistributed amongst the rest of the remaining family members. So people have to adjust their posture, their attitude, their responsibilities. There will be changes in a family after someone passes away. Likewise, let's say, so we're here, let's say there's a 17-year-old daughter here in Hayward, and she's upset with her parents because all of her friends can hang out past 12:30 at night, but she has this silly curfew at 10 p.m. She doesn't like it. Her parents are observing her social media stuff, engagement, and have some parental control. She's just really upset with her overbearing parents. So she says, you know what? I'm out of here. She gathers up her money, her birthday money or allowance money, gets on a train, Amtrak train, and goes to Chicago to live with her aunt and uncle. So she runs away from home to live with her aunt and uncle. And her aunt and uncle say, oh no, we'll take care of you. Come in, we'll take care of you. So just because the 17-year-old girl has moved to Chicago, the tension between her and her parents, does it disappear? No. Even though they're geographically distant, the unresolved tension is definitely there. It's just latent. How do I know this? Because when mom and dad come for Thanksgiving, you're going to feel the tension in the house again, right? It's still there. It's just not activated. I'm getting some tingles. It's just not activated. So sometimes we think a solution is someone needs to move away. We got to kick someone out. If you were here with us last night, we talked about how this is one of the strategies that Abraham's family used. Someone needs to be kicked out. Someone needs to run away to resolve the tension between us. In fact, you remember the story of Abraham and Lot when there was some tension between the shepherds. And Abraham told Lot, I'll let you choose. Where do you want to take your sheep? And Lot cast his eyes, and there's a beautiful, lush, fertile valley of Sodom and Gomorrah. And he took his flocks over there as a way to resolve the tension, right? But just because you separate, just because there's emotional cutoff, just because there's emotional distance or physical distance, does not get rid of the anxiety. Are we feeling this? Okay. But yet, this is often a tactic we use, right? I don't like this. I don't like this person. I don't like what's happening. I need some space, as if that space is the solution. The space is not a solution. It can be helpful, you have a breathing room, but that distance in and of itself is not a solution to the anxiety. So that means a lot of the stress we deal with is not actually our stress to deal with. It's other people's stress to deal with. But we are partaking in the brokering of those hot potatoes. Most people spend more energy working on other people's problems than we do working on our own problems. Change my mind. It can be nice to play armchair quarterback to help other people. It's hard to deal with your own stuff. So, triangling is actually useful for families because you're able to distribute the anxiety load amongst the remaining family members. The challenge is, the more we do this, the more our families or our church family will depend on triangulation as a way to manage the anxiety. We just got to spread it out more, right? Many hands make light work, but also too many cooks spoil the broth, right? So we need to be smart. Who are we involving in this? And does involving other people actually resolve the anxiety, or are we just pushing the anxiety around? In this situation, on the left-hand side, we have someone who's juggling, looks like 1, 2, 3 batons. Another one on his hip. He could probably do all three. He looks like someone who could juggle all three. On the right-hand side, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 different batons in there, because there are 3 people passing the batons. Do we see that? There are a lot more batons being thrown when there's 3 people. I want you to think about triangles like this. 3 people can handle more hot potatoes than 1 person. There's more hot potatoes that are being juggled around. It gets a little bit dicey when it's not just hot potatoes, it's dangerous things. So this person is juggling, what are those called again? Chainsaws, thank you. And I'm guessing the chainsaws are on. I don't know. That's just my guess. Over on this hand side, the right-hand side, we have some people on other people's shoulders, and we're all juggling, but this is a precarious position. When we just exchange this idea that we are just shoveling and sharing hot potatoes around, we can carry more with more people, but it doesn't actually get rid of the hot potatoes. We're all just volunteering to handle more of them. So in highly anxious and polarized families or churches, it becomes more difficult for the clinician, that would be me, to resist engaging in the triangle. When there's highly polarized families in the family therapy room for me, it's really hard for me to resist jumping in and catching their anxiety. Because I want to jump in and resolve the problem, often because I'm feeling anxious myself. Their anxiety is resonating with my own anxiety, and that's uncomfortable, so I want to solve the problem so I feel less anxious. And when this happens, objectivity is lost. I'm not actually able to see what's happening because I'm caught up in the mix. But this doesn't just happen as a family therapist. This happens in my personal life as well. The more I get caught up in other people's business, then I lose objectivity, and I'm just catching their anxiety. And all of a sudden, I'm helping to juggle their hot potatoes. Are they helpless, or do you just want to feel needed? Sometimes it feels good to help people. It feels really good. Like, oh man, I made their day. They needed me. Like, I was there at the right time, the right place. What a blessing you are in my life. I'm so glad you came to help me. And if this becomes the pattern where you are coming in to save them over and over and over, similar to the picture we saw earlier with the twins, if one person is doing all the feeding and it's not reciprocal, or even if it is reciprocal, all of a sudden we're feeding each other instead of feeding ourselves. And sometimes it's important to take care of yourself. So we start to tell ourselves narratives and reasons why it's good for us to get involved in other people's business, like, well, they need me right now, and I'm available. Or I have expertise in this area. Or they need my help specifically because I know them better than other people know them. So I'm in the right place, right time. Or maybe I know that I'm a good listener. Or I'm their pastor. Or I'm in a position of leadership. Or I'm their coworker. Or maybe I believe that I can do something better than other people because I've actually had this personal experience myself. Maybe I have an obligation because they're my neighbor or my family or my friend. In fact, this is my responsibility to help them. I would be a bad friend if I didn't help them. And I know what to do. I've been through this before. I have a solution. Here's a solution. Just do this, bada bing, bada boom, we're done. So sometimes we jump in thinking that we are a rescuer, thinking we can be the peacemaker, thinking we can be the one to fix it. And when we start to tell ourselves these stories, we also say, well, I can take one for the team. And we end up catching some of their anxiety, and they give a few of those hot potatoes over to us. Good thing they called me. I'm a neutral party and a great listener. Now, when I talk to the other person on your behalf, I'll need to hear their side of the story too. Hashtag blessed to be the middleman, meaning all of a sudden I'm getting in the middle, and I'm doing all the work to solve their problem because it's too much for them to handle. I think we need to be really careful, really judicious and intentional about when we are willing to get involved and when it's better to not get involved. So I want you to hear what I'm saying and what I'm not saying. Bryan's not saying you have to be a cold-hearted robot and can never help. What I am saying is most of us have the tendency to get caught up in other people's anxiety, and we end up doing more than we probably should. In doing so, we rob them of the opportunity to struggle and learn. We can support them in that, but then eventually they will be able to take care of their own stuff instead of relying on other people to carry the hot potatoes for them. They might even tell us stories like, you're so good at listening. No one understands me like you do. I can count on you. Thank you. We needed a mediator to join us. And even just, I need your advice. Or I'm worried about so-and-so. What do you think? This is a way for them to hand off their hot potatoes onto other people who are willing to take those potatoes. I think we need to be careful about how many potatoes we're willing to partake in. Because sometimes worry, their worry, or our worry, is used as a justification for gossip and triangulation. Just because we're anxious doesn't mean we need to automatically get involved in other people's triangles, or triangulate other people into our situation. I live in Southern California. I don't live up here, but I have lived in the Midwest before, in Michigan, Illinois, and Kansas, and Ohio growing up. This is snow. Has anyone ever lived around snow? Yeah, okay. For those of you who lived around snow, does this look like hard snow or soft snow? Hard. Okay, why would you say it's hard? It's dirty. Good. What else? It's clumpy. That's good. What else? It looks dense. Thank you. Thank you. So notice how this snow, so when it's, for those of you who've not been around snow, when it snows, usually people are hired, maybe there's like a plow on the front of a pickup truck to go and clean out either streets or parking lots, and they push snow to the side. In this situation, we have a house, and there's this big pile of snow here, and I'm guessing they would park their car on this side of the snow. So to get to the car, they have to climb over the snow. This is hard snow. It's like ice. It's packed. It's muddy. It's clumpy. How about this scenario? How is this person in this car, this hatchback, going to get out of their driveway? What? Shovel it. Does this big boulder of ice look like it's ready to be shoveled? No. Now, they may have to go around it, and some of these are going to be heavy chunks, right? They're not light, fluffy powder snow. These are heavy. So what happened was, when they were clearing, whoever came to clear out the road, just pushed the snow to the bottom of the driveway. And now they're stuck there. Imagine you live here. You can't even get into your garage to get your shovel to move some of the snow. In this situation, this happened in the news near Berrien Springs, Michigan. Back in 2011, there was someone who went to this auto parts store. It says 18-pack for $15.99. Someone went to the auto parts store, was frustrated with how they were treated by the manager, and they walked out in a huff. A few weeks later, they were called to clear out the parking lot of this establishment. So they pushed all of this snow up to the front doors so that all the patrons would have to climb over the snow to get into this establishment. This snow is a lot to move. You need big vehicles, you need power. Little shovels aren't going to do it. Because this snow has been around here for a long time. It's going to take a long time for this snow to melt because it's so compact. I want you to imagine you live in a cul-de-sac, you and let's say 3 other people. And one morning, Brian gets up, goes outside, I see there's like 2 inches of snow. And the houses are fairly close together, like little condos in this cul-de-sac. So I shovel the snow from my driveway onto the next person's driveway. Next person comes out 10 minutes later. Whoa, more snow than I expected, especially on my driveway compared to everything else. Oh, Brian's driveway is clear. I guess we're all shoveling snow this direction. So now there's, 4 to 6 inches of snow. This person comes out half an hour later. Whoa, more snow than I was expecting. There's a lot of snow in my driveway. Well, I guess we're moving it this way. Shovels around the cul-de-sac. The 4th person comes out. Whoa, where'd all the snow come from? Well, there's an open driveway at Brian's place. I'm just going to shovel it over there. So we spend a lot of energy shoveling snow around, but not getting rid of the snow. That's what happens. Find people who are willing receptacles to take some of our hot potatoes. And some people enjoy being receptacles because they feel good about themselves. Oh, I'm providing a service to my family and friends. I can do this. I can be the bigger person. I got shoulders to bear the brunt, to bear the weight. But in doing so, we're not actually getting rid of the anxiety. We're just shoveling it around. And the more we shovel it around, the more likely it's going to get caught and stuck in the family system. All right, can you recall any examples of triangles in Abraham's story? Yes. Hagar, and who else was in the triangle? Ishmael, Sarah. Boom. That's one triangle. Good. What's another triangle? One of the kings, like from the east? Oh, King Abimelech or King Pharaoh, Abram and Sarah. Good, awesome. That's another triangle. Good. What's another triangle? Brothers and the dad. Good. Any three people will be a triangle, right? As long as you name three biblical characters that are in Genesis, I'll say yes. Right? That's a triangle. It's just three people. Usually three people in a relationship. But we don't actually need to participate in triangles in this manner. There are different ways of being and better ways of doing. When we allow ourselves to be triangulated, we don't actually remove any of the anxiety. We just spread it around. The result is we are willing to engage in this practice of spreading anxiety to and from those we love. And we're doing a lot of work shoveling when maybe we don't need to just be shoveling, because the more time you spend helping other people, the more emotional energy you'll spend thinking about their problems. And it can take a toll on you. So to the extent you become responsible for or try to change the relationship between two others, the more you will experience stress of that relationship. And what happens to the system when that happens? Well, a couple things. People become, whoa. Oh, go back like 4 slides for me, maybe 5. I don't know what happened, but it was exciting. Keep going. Wow, now you see what's coming later on in the test. That's great. Keep going back, probably like 3 or 4 more slides. One more. There we go, right here. So when conflict is not managed directly, it's just spread around, there's this social relationship, this social contract that we will all do it, because that's what's expected. We are family. We are friends. We take care of each other. And I'm not saying we shouldn't take care of each other, but there's more than one way to care for one another, all right? More than one way to care about this. And what happens is people might not want to take responsibility for their own issues, and then anxiety and issues become stuck and frozen in the family. I'm guessing most of us have heard about churches, families where there's just a little bit more anxiety than other churches and families, because it gets stuck in the family system, and it becomes the new norm for that family, and it becomes familiar, whether or not they like it. And this can prevent growth and compromises their ability to act objectively and think rationally and think logically. We need emotions. We also need logic. We need both of those. And sometimes in an anxiety-ridden family, it's all just emotionally driven. So this is Little Miss takes on other people's anxiety as if it were her own. Because sometimes it's hard to know, is it my anxiety or someone else's anxiety that I'm catching? That can be hard to differentiate. But if we can do that, we can become much more intentional about what sort of hot potatoes we're willing to tap into. So, Bryan's been talking a lot. Here's a chance to talk amongst your groups. I want you to get in groups of 2, 3, or 4, no more than 2, 3, or 4. Please not a group of 5 unless you absolutely need it. I want you to try and answer these questions. What is a triangle? How do they work? What's the function of the triangle? Why are triangles not dyads? The basic building blocks of emotional systems. What are some reasons or narratives or stories or justifications that we give ourselves in order that we willingly participate in triangles? And then what happens to us or the system when we participate in the triangles actively? So try and answer these questions. Get in groups of 2, 3, or 4, maybe 5 if you need it, and try and answer these questions. And we'll meet back together in maybe like 5 minutes to see how our answers are. me out. What is a good answer that you heard come out of your mouth or someone next to you or in another group? What is a triangle and how do they work? How do they function? We have a microphone so we can all hear our answers. What's a triangle? How do they function?
Triangle is a group of at least 3 people.
3 people. Good.
They have different ideas and problems that they're experiencing.
Different problems and ideas they're experiencing. Good.
And if one person can suggest things that they can meet in the middle, then that might work or resolve the problem.
It might work or resolve the problem.
Might.
It might. Or they grow dependent on that one problem solver. Right? Right? So how do triangles work? We share the anxiety amongst us. We all take roles to share the anxiety amongst us. Good. Okay. Why are triangles, that's 3 people, not dyads, not 2 people, the basic building blocks of emotional systems?
What do you mean by that?
Dyad, 2 people. Why are relationships about 3s, not 2s? Why are relationships about 3s, not 2s? Oh, we have a hand over here, and then we'll...
I was going to say because there's no mediator.
Because there's no what mediator?
There's no mediator with a dyad.
Close, not quite, not quite. Why are relationships about 3s, not 2s?
Are 3s more stable?
Are 3s more stable? Yes, 3s are more stable. Yes, sometimes. We'll learn about stable and unstable triangles later on this afternoon. But why are relationships about 3s, not just 2s? There's a hand over here in the back. Got some traveling to do. Get your steps in. Good. I'm glad we're going over this. That means I didn't explain it clear enough.
Is it because we've got anxieties and emotions we need to share or to discuss and offload onto other people? I
agree that as humans, we usually need to discuss and share anxieties. There's a social contract. We'll do this. But I think at a fundamental level, the relationship with 2 people is not just about them. They are affected by other people around them, or other dreams, or addictions, or TV shows, or books, or churches, or pastors, or people they come across, or ideas. 2 people are affected by other people around them. And because of that, if we just focus on 2 people, it's like we have blinders on and we can't see the other stuff that's affecting what's happening. Relationships are about 3s. There's always 3 people in a relationship. Even Adam and Eve weren't just by themselves, right? Relationships are not just about 2s. They're about 3s because there's always more than just 2 people in the room. Even if there's just 2 people in the room physically, there's usually another party present psychologically. Whether it's unresolved tension, an unresolved issue, a topic we haven't talked about, or maybe we have a neighbor that came over to visit and we don't know how to handle this. We're going in the back room to talk about, what do we do with them? They came here to visit. I'm not sure what to do. So there's more than just 2 people in a relationship. It's never just 2. There's always more than 2. How are we feeling about this idea? Whether or not you agree with me, does it make some sense? There's a hand over here.
So like 2 people exist in a vacuum.
Correct. Thank you. You should be up here. Yeah. 2 people cannot exist in a vacuum. Good. There's a hand over here too.
I just want to say, every now and then, like 1 in a million, you go to some church and you see an old couple. They've been married 60 years, and they look like they've never had an argument. And they say they've never had an argument, and I kind of believe them. So I'm wondering, is that possible? Is that exception to the rule? You know what I'm saying?
Good. So a couple things. 1, I don't know this couple. 2, maybe so words don't have meanings, they get meanings. Maybe they don't argue like we argue. Maybe they have discussions instead. Or maybe they have a discussion, but they find a way to resolve it so it doesn't linger on. Usually arguments are not fresh. They're old, right? They're leftovers, right? They're repurposed food. They're repurposed unresolved tension. So maybe they found a way to get through some of the differences they experience between them, so in their minds, they've never had an argument. The other option is they're lying. Another option is both of them or one of them is swallowing the tension they experience in their relationship. So there's tension between one person and the other person, and because I want relational harmony, I will swallow the storm, and now the storm is in my belly. I'm sacrificing my well-being for the perceived stability of the relationship. And the stability of the relationship is dependent on how much I'm willing to swallow. But I will experience some physiological symptoms the more storms that I swallow. Because there's still a storm, it's just in my belly, right? So maybe that's what's happening. Maybe one person is accommodating too much, swallowing all the difficulties, so that there's perceived harmony on the surface. Sometimes it's good to swallow some of these things, just to kind of like get through the day, but we should always address them as well. And we could go down a rabbit hole talking about over-functioning, under-functioning, dominant versus submissive relationships, and we're not doing that right now. We're talking about what happens in, I don't even know how we got on this topic. Oh, you had this observation that sometimes there can be couples that have been together for a long time, and they report never having an argument. Maybe because they are emotionally mature enough to be able to handle differences. Okay, what are some reasons or justifications or stories or narratives we tell ourselves to encourage us to be willingly participating in the brokering of other people's hot potatoes? Because what? When you care. Right, I care about them. Good. What's another one? Raise your hand. We can get the microphone to you.
To fix the argument.
Yeah, I can fix the problem. I know what to do. Back aside. Here I come. A, B, C. Bada bing, bada boom. Stop fighting. I solved it. Good. What's another justification? I heard something. I didn't see a hand. Love. Because we're supposed to love one another. Good. Anything else? Because they're my family. I have a responsibility to carry their hot potatoes. This is what we do in our family. Good. Okay. What happens to us and or the system when we all willingly participate in triangles? The stress just circulates. It's just spread around, right? We all just participate. Does the stress dissipate or does the stress circulate? I'm going to try and hold on to that word because that rhymes. I'm going to use that down the road. It circulates. It does not dissipate. And so what happens is the more stress circulates and gets circulated around the triangle or triangles in the family system, the more it gets compacted and stuck in the family. Hand back there.
It becomes a generational problem.
Hello. It becomes a generational problem. Because the anxiety, unresolved tension, the compacted hot potatoes are then passed down to the next generation like a precious family heirloom. And then we carry it, and then we pass on the next one, and then they carry it, and then they carry it. So it's passed down. So a lot of the stress we experience is probably old. And it may not have started with us. But we are carrying it. Other hand back there.
Yeah, to just take that even further, it can actually even maybe be explained as cultural.
Correct.
Like something that we do within our culture or
Correct.
don't do because of our culture.
Correct. It can be seen as cultural. And some cultures have spread their unresolved tension onto other cultures that did not ask for that tension. And then that has now become stuck in their culture. So cultures, people groups, will transfer their unresolved tension to others. Usually those who have more power will take advantage of the hierarchy of power and control and either on purpose or inadvertently pass that on to other cultures that may not have as much power and control, and then they blame those other cultures for having all that extra anxiety that they dumped onto them. Hand over there.
I think it makes me think of the telephone where you get in a line or a circle and you pass it on. Somewhere down the line, somebody down there's not even going to know what it is they're fighting about or why they don't like this particular group. They're going to be clueless, but they've carried that with them and hated it for so long that they don't know what else to do but hate them.
Correct. So racism?
Well, not just racism, anything. I mean, I don't like you because you didn't always give me what I needed or what I wanted, but eventually you get lost into, well, why am I angry at them? You and my mom had that problem. Or that was great grandma and grandpa. Why am I still mad at future cousins that had nothing to do with it any more than I did?
Yes.
Why is that tension still there between us? I mean, eventually someone's not going to know what it is that created that tension to start with.
Correct. So I'll just say oppressive practices are taught and passed down. So few generations may not understand why we're doing it because it didn't start with them, but this is just, we go with the flow. It reminds me of, have you heard the story of the woman with the meatloaf? Have you heard this before? Oh, good. Oh, good. Good. Okay. So there's this young woman who they're getting together for Christmas, and she's helping. There's like 4 generations in the kitchen, and she's helping to make this meatloaf. So I don't make meatloaf, so I'll tell you what's. So there's like onions and garlic and parsley and spices and some breadcrumbs and then some ground up beef, and you mix that all together, and then apparently you cut off that. You kind of put it in this little ball. You cut off the edges. You put it in the oven and you bake it. And so this young woman is like, hold on, why are we cutting off the edges of the meatloaf? Well, that's part of the secret recipe. This doesn't make any sense. You're just taking more matter, more mass away from the rest. Why do you need to do that? We've always done it that way. She goes to her mother, Mom, why do we cut off the edges of the meatloaf? And she's like, what do you mean? We made meatloaf yesterday. You cut off the edges, you baked the rest, and you threw that away. Why do we do that? Well, it's part of the secret family recipe. That doesn't make any sense. You're not changing any ratios. You're just removing some of the meatloaf. We've just always done that. So she goes to her grandma. Grandma, why do we cut off the edge of the meatloaf? What are you talking about? Why do we make the meatloaf and you cut off the edges and then bake it? Oh, probably because it keeps the meatloaf moist. That doesn't make any sense, Grandma. You're just removing some of the meatloaf. Why do you do this? I don't know. We've just always done that. So she goes to her great-grandma. Great-grandma, why do we cut off the edge of the meatloaf? What are you talking about? Why do we cut off the edge of the meatloaf? I don't understand what you're talking about. So yesterday, we were making meatloaf, and your daughter and your granddaughter, and now your great-granddaughter, were all in the kitchen making meatloaf. We cut off the edges, and then we bake it. Why do you do that? I have no idea. But we're all doing it. Oh, okay. You see, when we were growing up, we made the meatloaf recipe, but the pan we had wasn't big enough for all the meatloaf. So I'd have to cut off some of the meatloaf. I'd put it near the pan, I'd cut off the edges, place it in the pan, and put it in the oven. So for 1, 2, 3 generations, people have been cutting off the edge of the meatloaf for no good reason. But this is just how we do it. And that's often, it's not just meatloaf recipes that are passed down, right? How we respond to anger, sadness, frustration, when people cross boundaries. All that is also passed down from generation to generation. And if all it takes is one person, we're getting some more tingles, some goosebumps. It takes one person to get curious about their patterns to find out why we cut off the edge of the meatloaf. You may never find out. It may span multiple generations. You can't reach back to find the answer. But hopefully you can at least say, this doesn't make sense. I don't know if I want to cut off the edge of the meatloaf anymore. Maybe there's something else I can do instead. Okay, So what happens when we participate in the triangles? The anxiety gets shifted around. It never disappears from the system. We're a little bit behind because you asked me stories about asked me a question about a story. We're going to try and take 5 minutes more and try and explain some, and then we'll take a little break, okay? We're going to talk about our role in the triangle. We have 3 different roles we can play in the triangle, and not every triangle has all 3 roles represented. But these are the 3 possible roles we can play. And I have done all 3 of these roles at different times. I'm sure you've done at least 2, maybe all 3 of them. These are not mandatory roles. These are just possibilities of roles we can play in the triangle. We are the generator, the amplifier, or the dampener. We generate anxiety in the triangle. We bring it in. We amplify the anxiety. We make a big deal about it. Or we dampen the anxiety. So, not all these roles are represented. Not every triangle has all 3 in the triangle. These are just 3 possible roles. So, the generator brings their anxiety as their +1. Hey, we have the issue that I can't resolve. We need to talk about this. That's the generator. The amplifier will catch that anxiety, and they will amplify it. They'll make a big deal about it. It could look like this. There's a 10-year-old boy that comes home and talks to his father. Says, Dad, I'm getting bullied at school. And the dad might go, what? Who is bullying you? What is their name? I've just started to what is the name right now? Okay. I'm taking you to school tomorrow. We're going to stand outside that door, and you're going to point out who those bullies. Is it a group bully? Is it just 2 people? It's 3 people. You're going to point out who they are, and I'm going to get to know their names. I'm going to talk to the principal. In fact, I'm going to call your teacher right now, making a big deal about it. He's catching his son's anxiety, amplifying it, making a huge deal about it. In some ways, this 10-year-old might be glad they support them. On the other hand, be like, whoa, this is too much, because they're amplifying. The other way, this could be amplified. Let's say the 10-year-old goes to his mother. Mom, I'm getting bullied at school. And the mom says, don't worry about it. You'll grow out of it. Besides, you're only in school for another 7 months. Then you'll have a new classroom. You got to be tough. You got to toughen up. It's not that big of a deal. Just ignore them, okay? Just calm down. Son starts to cry. Hey. I told you, don't worry about it. Just ignore them. They're just being kids. It's not that big of a deal. That's also amplifying the anxiety, right? Because the parent is dismissing the anxiety that was brought to the table. In both dismissing and actively amplifying, both of those are ways to amplify the anxiety. So we can introduce the anxiety, we can generate it, we can amplify it, we can also dampen it. Third option. 10-year-old comes to a grandparent who's living at home. I talked to mom and dad, did not go well. I'm getting bullied at school. Grandparent says, oh no, I'm so sorry. I'm glad you had the courage to come talk to me about it. Come sit down. Okay. Tell grandma what's happening. The son starts to share. Oh, that sounds terrible. I'm so sorry. Okay. I'm here for you. We can get through this. A much different response than before, right? Because the person who's amplifying the anxiety is catching that anxiety, and they're responding to the anxiety they caught. The dampener is not catching the anxiety. They're recognizing anxieties in the room, but they're going to be a calming presence, because calmness can also spread, not just anxiety. These are often subconscious processes. We're not even aware that they are happening. And maybe you might start as a family therapist, I do all of these on purpose. A couple comes into the room, and say they're coming in, they're fighting. We need to talk about this. Bryan, we need to talk about this. Doesn't always happen. They're like dogs barking at one another, just yapping. And I might go, okay. All right. Sounds like we had a week, but we're here now. All right. The time is yours. I'll help you focus. We can do this. So I'm trying to dampen it. Other times, I might actually want to amplify it. A couple comes in. How was your week? Not that great. She threw a cup at my head, and then I threw a plate at her, but we're past it now. We just want to come in. We just want to work on stuff. And I might go, whoa, hold on a second. Wait, You threw a cup at their head? Like at them? Well, in their general direction. Did it hit them? No. On the wall behind them. Well, hold on. So you threw a cup and it hit the wall behind them, and then you threw a plate in retaliation? You could have really hurt each other. So see how I'm trying to amplify this? This is a big deal. This isn't just a food fight. Like, you could have seriously hurt them. You could have chipped a tooth, a black eye. We can't have this violence happening in a relationship. You're just kind of minimizing it, but let's just stop here for a second. I'm making a big deal about it. I'm amplifying it so that we could pay attention to it. Other times, a couple might come in, and we've been meeting for a few weeks, and we're talking about stuff. They have set their goals. We're working on it. And I might say, okay, so what are we talking about today? And they might start bringing up some issue. I say, okay, we can talk about that if you want. We've been meeting for 6 weeks, and we've never talked about your cancer. Why is that? Boom, I'm introducing anxiety. Because they're trying to, I'm going to get some tingles, trying to not talk about it. So I'm introducing it because this needs some attention. So all of these roles can be helpful in certain situations. But most of the time, we need to learn how to dampen more than we need to learn how to amplify or generate. Hand over here.
So with the grandma situation, the parameters is calm and understanding.
The grandma is calm and understanding, and that calm presence will be able to help the child who is dysregulated be able to calm down. What happens is when we perceive there as a threat, we go into fight, flight, or freeze, this frontal cortex that we have that helps us do math problems, do taxes, be creative, solve problems. This actually goes offline. Instead, we are in this fight, flight, or freeze mode, and physiologically, we get the shot of adrenaline, shot of cortisol, our heart rate increases, we start breathing more shallow, more blood goes to our major muscle groups, a whole system change when we perceive there's a threat. We can't think straight like that. So by having someone who's cool, calm, collected to co-regulate with the child's able to calm down, and then, see, you're trying to get me to tell you what we're going to get to at the very end of this seminar. We're at the solution. What happens next is the way the grandmother approaches the child who's introducing the anxiety can really affect how the child believes in their ability to solve the problem themselves. And I'll teach you how to do that later on this afternoon. In fact, that should probably be our little hook, right? Let's take a little break, maybe like a 10-minute bio break, get some water, walk around, come back at 3:15. How does that sound? Or 3:20, what do we want? Between 3:15, 3:20, we're going to start at 3:20, so start moseying on here at 3:15, and we'll start part 2. Great. So we're going to start at hear the sound of my voice, secret sign between you and me. We're about to begin. So here we go. So we talk about the roles, the anxiety generator, amplifier, dampener. Now we're going to talk about our position in the triangle and then spend the rest of our time with stable and unstable triangles. Our position in the triangle, forgot about this one. All right. So why are you dragging all that negativity into this triangle? Why are you generating the anxiety? Because it needed to be brought to your attention. You know I can't resist making mountains out of your molehills. This isn't even my molehill. I don't care whose it was because it's mine now. Someone can introduce, someone else can amplify, then the person can get upset that it was amplified, and the person who's amplified might take it and actually go to another triangle and take it on as that. So position the triangle. This is all about whose problem is it. Am I an outsider to the problem, or am I an insider to the problem? So when things are good, the two people don't actually need this third party to try and help them. But when there's unresolved tension, then they need, quote unquote, this third party to help them experience a little more stability in the triangle. But in the next slide, T at the top is an outsider. P and Q are experiencing some conflict. The conflict is between Q and P. T is an outsider. But Q and P might really want help from T to come help them, right? But it's not T's issue. It's P's and Q's issue. They should mind their own P's and Q's because T is on the outside. But T might get roped in as if they have a responsibility, they're a good listener, they know what to do, et cetera, et cetera. So the outside person is actually the preferable position. Because in the outside position, you're not catching their anxiety, and you're able to have a more objective view of what's happening. So stay outside of their business. That's how I like to think of this. An outsider versus an insider. And if you know whether or not you're an outsider or an insider, that's going to help you down the road deciding whether the problem at hand is your problem or someone else's problem. Okay. Let's talk about stable and unstable triangles. Let's move there. Here we go. We're talking about stability of the triangle, and some triangles want to change. Almost like you're on a stool that is not even. You're kind of bouncing around the stool. You're trying to figure out, how can I get a stable spot on the stool? And you can never find it. So some triangles are stable, and they don't want to move. Let's do that again. Unstable triangles are stable. They're moving. They want to change. Unstable triangles want to change. Stable triangles don't want to move. They do not want to change. Stable triangles want to stay the same. Unstable triangles want to change. They are not comfortable. Unstable triangles are unstable. They are seeking some sort of change. Stable triangles are stable. They are resistant to change. Not that they can never change, but they are resistant to change. So we have two types of triangles. The unstable triangles that want to change, and the stable triangles that do not want to change. Are we on board with this so far? Now, words don't have meanings, they get meanings. Sometimes we think, a stable triangle is better. Not necessarily. Because stable and unstable have nothing to do with the amount of dysfunction or anxiety in the triangle. You can have a very dysfunctional triangle that is stable. You can have a very dysfunctional triangle that is unstable. You can have a very functional triangle that's pretty good that is unstable, so it's looking for change, even though there's not a lot of tension. You can also have a stable triangle that is also adaptive, not a lot of tension here. So stable and unstable has nothing to do with the amount of stress or anxiety experienced in the triangles. It's just whether or not the triangle itself is looking for change. I'm going to be saying the same thing for the next 90 minutes. And even if I can't explain it clearly, hopefully through raw repetition, we're going to get it. So triangles themselves have power. The stability of the triangle resists whether or not the triangle itself is wanting to change. Stable triangles want to stay the same way they are. Unstable triangles want to change. Unstable triangles actually want to become stable triangles. They don't like being unstable. And I want you to think of triangles as having their own personality, separate from the three people or three parties in them. So, do the labels of stable or unstable describe the amount of dysfunction in the triangle? No. Whether the triangle is stable or unstable has nothing to do with the degree of dysfunction or tension in the triangle. Stable triangles itself resist change, whereas unstable triangles want to change. They're wanting change. We on board so far? Hopefully? Okay. We're going to test your knowledge moving forward. There are two types of stable triangles, and there are also two types of unstable triangles. Stable triangles want to stay the same. Unstable triangles want to change. Awesome. Love it. These are two stable triangles. The black lines indicate parties who are getting along with one another, so this is one big happy family. And the other stable triangle, they have a common enemy. We'll be going over this the next 90 minutes. Unstable triangles want to change. These are two unstable triangles, where there's one person in the middle trying to have a good relationship with two people, but these two people are fighting like cats and dogs. And the other one is nobody gets along with anyone else. And we're going to spend the next several minutes just with these types of triangles. This will help us understand what's happening. In Ruth, this is a stable triangle. Naomi, Ruth, and Boaz. Everyone gets along with one another, and stable triangles want to stay. Oh, I like this. Stable triangles want to stay the same. That's awesome. Good. Here's another stable triangle. In Genesis 16, Abram, Hagar, and Sarai. This is a stable triangle in Genesis 16. It will change later, though, right? But at this point in time, this is the idea. Hey, how about you take Hagar, my handmaiden? This will solve our infertility challenge. Right now, this is a stable triangle. Here's some interlocking triangles. Miriam, baby Moses, Pharaoh's daughter, and the biological mother Jochebed. Everyone gets along with everyone else. We have a triangle in the bottom left between Jochebed, baby Moses, and Miriam. We have a triangle on the bottom right, Miriam, Pharaoh's daughter, baby Moses. We have a triangle on the top right, Jochebed, Pharaoh's daughter, baby Moses. We have a triangle on the top left, Jochebed, Pharaoh's daughter, and Miriam. So there are four interlocking triangles here, and all of them are stable, which means these stable triangles are all reinforcing one another, resistant to change. Doesn't mean it can't change, but these stable triangles want to stay the same. They're all stable right here. No bond is stronger than two coworkers who hate the same person. So me and my bestie, a new coworker we don't get along with, so we can chat at the coffee table or whatever about this new coworker. We have a common enemy. This is a stable triangle. Even though there are squiggly lines, this stable triangle resists change. This is stable. I am a Seahawks fan. I do not like the Patriots, no matter what. I always do not like the Patriots. So I'm always against the Patriots, and I'm always for whoever is playing the Patriots that week. This is a stable triangle. This will never change. Genesis 3:15. And I will put enmity, this is God saying this, I will put enmity between you and the woman, between your seed and her seed. God is saying, I'm going to put tension between you and the woman, between your seed and her seed, and this is going to create a stable triangle. We have a common enemy. The triangle itself is stable and resistant to change, but we know that some people in the triangle want the triangle to change, right? So the triangle's stability is separate from the desires of the people, the various people in the triangle. We know the deceiver wants to change this triangle, right? In fact, this is what he did with Eve. Are you sure God has your best interest in mind? Oh, maybe he doesn't, right? Starting to sow some doubt. Because if we can change this triangle into an unstable triangle, then maybe, so the deceiver wants to produce some tension between God and humanity, or might say that, hey, if you stick with me, this is a better option than this judgmental God. So there's this whole idea of Satan trying to change the triangle. Even the triangle, as God set it up, was stable. Notice how there's tension in this triangle, right? But the triangle itself is resistant to change as God set it up. Doesn't mean it can't change, it's just resistant to it. Here's our first unstable triangle. Y is trying to get along with X and Z, but X and Z are fighting. This is a difficult triangle to be in. This is my least favorite triangle to be in. I do not like being Y. I also don't like being X and Z. Because Y just wants X and Z to get along. And X and Z just wants Y to choose a side. This is a challenging triangle. So it could be you, your parents, and your partner. Maybe there's tension between them. And you just want them to get along. Maybe you have two friends. Before we all hang out as besties and get cinnamon rolls on Wednesdays. But now something happened, one person showed up late to your birthday party, didn't get them a good enough gift, and now they can't hang out. So now I have to choose between two friends. If I choose one friend, the other person can be upset. If I try and choose both, why are you still talking to them? Oh, it's a difficult situation to be in. And it's not the people in the triangle, it's the triangle itself that is seeking stability. It would be so much easier if I just picked a side. I'm going to stick with this friend and with this other friend on the outs. Now we have a common enemy. But I don't want to do that. But the triangle wants me to do that, even though Bryan may not want to do that. Maybe it's you, your teenager, and a partner. So if I put these triangles up here, at the very top we have the unstable triangles. On the bottom we have the stable triangles. And a lot of people think, we need the stable triangle. This is our goal. Not necessarily. We don't necessarily want a stable triangle. If me and my partner struggle with some sort of addiction, I'd rather have this other stable triangle. Me and my partner have tension with the addiction, whoever's addiction it is, and we want to keep that tension there. And that's the stable triangle. That's better than all of us, both of us, and our addiction all getting along, right? So stable and unstable isn't about how good or bad the triangle is. It's all about whether the triangle is resistant to change or it seeks for change. Matthew 6:34, no one can serve two masters. Either you will hate one and love the other, or you'll be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. Having two masters, if I have two jobs, if I work at Taco Bell, and then in the morning, and then typically I go to work at Wendy's in the afternoon, if I have two bosses and they both schedule me to work on Sunday, I'm going to have to make a choice, right? I can't work both at Taco Bell and Wendy's at the exact same time. I can't clock into both and cook fast food at both. I have to make a choice. That's what's happening in this unstable triangle. The triangle is saying something needs to happen to change because there's a lot of instability in this triangle. So, in this situation, before I came here to the church, I did not know what the current worship arrangements were. I don't know if there are people in church that are pro-drums or anti-drums. But if Tyler comes in and only listens to the pro-drum group, the anti-drum group might get upset. If Tyler only listens to the anti-drum group, people are like, well, why can't we have a little bit of rhythm, right? So he might be caught in an unstable triangle trying to maintain a good relationship with both sides. A few more slides like this. Strap in, Tyler. So I don't know if he's team law or team grace, because sometimes people like to emphasize the law. Some people like to emphasize the grace. And he might be trying to maintain a good relationship with both of them. Or maybe he's like, I'm just going to eat this triangle of pizza right now and let you two sort it out, because it's not my job to make you two agree. Before I came and visited Crystal and Tyler, I didn't know if they were team cat or team dog. It seemed like you're team dog. Is that correct? But if they were team cat and team dog, and those dogs and cats were fighting, they may not want to get rid of one or the other. Then now I know, like, we're not going to bring a cat and we'll just have a dog. But sometimes we're in those situations where in our house we have some people who are fighting. It'd be so much easier if we just kicked one out, even though that does not resolve the tension, right? That does not get rid of the anxiety. Kick someone out. This is what Abraham's family did quite a bit. We still have something to deal with if we kick someone out. Here we go. I don't know were you like pro-mask or anti-mask during this time? You're wearing masks right now, so I assume you were okay with masks. But I know there might be some people in the congregation that were anti-mask and some who are pro-mask. There might have been some challenges during the height of COVID. What are we going to do? Are we going to worship together or not, right? Are we going to have faith and not let this pandemic get in the way of us worshiping together in a community? Or are we going to try and be respectful of other people's boundaries and trying to make sure they are protected? So there's different sides to this argument. I don't know where your political stance is or your political leanings is. Sometimes there are two people who see things differently, and we're trying to get along with both of them, even though those two parties disagree ideologically. It can be challenging to maintain a good relationship with both sides. I don't know about what your responses were to COVID, whether you believe in vaccines or alternative ways to respond to it. There are different ways to respond to the COVID, which I don't know if we're past it now. I mean, it's still around, but the response to it is a little bit different than it was before. I don't know if you see global warming as just people hugging trees, or global warming as just God hugging us closer. Again, you might, regardless of someone's ideology about this, you might be trying to maintain a good relationship with both sides. But these two sides are wanting you to pick a side, to choose. He told me a little bit about how this church has recently done a renovation, in fact, before he got here. And as I was talking with him about this, he was like, oh, I'm so glad I wasn't here to deal with that. Because usually the two choices are chartreuse or burnt orange. And this church went in a different direction, and it looked great, by the way. And I sat in those pews, super comfortable. I hope they stay that way. So I'm glad that this church did not go into the burnt orange or the chartreuse color. Here's an unstable triangle. This is Genesis 21. This is 5 chapters later. And now it's an unstable triangle because there's tension between Sarah and Hagar. Why is there tension? One is fertile, one's not. There's a baby, and remember, the addition or removal of a third party can change what happens between two people. Even though the baby is not here yet, infertility was always part of this conversation. But now that there's a baby here, not even out of the womb, there's tension between Hagar and Sarah. Do we see that? That has changed their relationship. Relationships are about 3s, not 2s. When baby comes, it's clear Sarah does not want to have anything to do with it. In fact, Sarah does not show up for the birth. She is not mentioned as being there, even though this was her original idea. So there's an unstable triangle above, but Hagar and the baby are hopefully getting along, and they have a common enemy, Sarah. So we have an unstable triangle above and a stable triangle down below. How are we feeling about this? We're going to get a lot more practice, I promise. Next slide, we're going to rotate this. Same family, but now let's bring everyone into it. So we have Ishmael and Isaac, Abraham, Hagar, and Sarah. Abraham trying to have a good relationship with Isaac and Ishmael. We know Sarah and Isaac get along. So on the right-hand side, that's a stable triangle, just like Hagar, Ishmael, and Abraham. 2 stable triangles and 1 unstable triangle. We know that there's tension between Sarah and Ishmael. Let's put a little squiggly line there. And there's tension between Ishmael and Isaac because Isaac was being Isaaced by Ishmael at an event. So that's an unstable triangle. So Hagar, Sarah, and Ishmael is stable, and Sarah, Isaac, and Ishmael is stable. So we have a mix of stable and unstable triangles, and this is a mess. Right? This is a mess. So what is Sarah's sweet, simple solution to all of this? Get him out. That's right. Too much drama. Kick out Hagar and the boy. The solution, kick him out. Just be patient. It takes a while to get them out. They got to get packed, move on down the road. They go away, so now it's just us. Life is so much easier, right? Whew, all that tension just disappeared, right? We know that the tension between the descendants of Isaac and the descendants of Ishmael is still present today. Kicking them out did not resolve the tension. It made it simpler, but it did not get rid of the tension. Because triangles are forever. There's still unresolved tension between these two parties. Here's another unstable triangle. Nobody gets along with anyone else. So I think it's Laban and Leah and Jacob might be the next slide. We'll see. There we go. Nobody's with anyone else. We know that Jacob does not prefer Leah. Leah was forced into this by her father, and we know her father is trying to take advantage of Jacob. This is an unstable triangle, and unstable triangles want to change. Good. Unstable triangles want to change. Again, if you're over here on the left-hand side, and you want to get to one big happy family, which is not necessarily always the ideal, but if you do, you have to go through the gateways of instability. You can't just jump from the bottom left stable triangle where there's a common enemy in the family to everyone gets along. You're going to have to repair relationships. So you might go through this time of instability where one person is trying to maintain a good relationship with two other people, even though there's tension between those two other people. And sometimes we get caught here bouncing back and forth because an unstable triangle is seeking change, but we don't know which direction. Down here or down here to the right. We know stable triangles are resistant to change. Unstable triangles are trying to seek change because the triangles themselves have power. The triangles themselves have influence over the way we interact with one another. And at this point in time, you might be thinking, wow, Bryan's been talking about stable and unstable. I'm not sure if I really understand all of this. And at this point, I'm embarrassed to raise my hand to even ask. So don't worry, I got you. We're going to break up into small groups and try and answer these questions to see if we can see clearer answers. So get in small groups of 2, 3, 4, or 5. What is the difference between stable versus unstable triangle? Can you draw or provide an example of a stable triangle? And then can you draw or provide an example of an unstable triangle? So try and find the answers. I see your hand. I'll walk back to there to you. Try and find the answers amongst your groups, and then we'll talk about it together. Between a stable and an unstable triangle. Someone help me. What's the difference between a stable and unstable triangle? The unstable triangles want to change and become stable. Good. Good. 2 or more squiggly lines. So it's actually, oh boy, I don't know if I can go back far enough. Oh, here we go. If there's an odd number of squiggly lines, that's unstable. 1 or 3. If there's 2 or 0, an even number of squiggly lines, then it's stable. So 1 or 3, an odd number of squiggly lines, it's unstable. 2 or 0, that's a stable triangle. Good. Someone give me an example of a stable triangle. What's a stable triangle? Like 3, tell me a little scenario where there's a stable triangle.
Father, Son, Holy Trinity.
Father, Son, Head, the Trinity. Okay, the Trinity, stable triangle. Good. Someone give me an example of an unstable triangle. Let me see a hand. Is there a hand back? Yes.
A father who likes his son and his daughter, but they don't get along.
Good. A father who likes his son and his daughter, but they don't get along. God is in millions of unstable triangles where his children do not get along with one another. And they're wanting God to choose their side against their enemy, right? This happens in the Psalms quite a bit. A lot of this. Bless me, O Lord, and send my enemies down to Sheol, to the grave. This whole choose me and get them. It's a common enemy. That's what I want, right? Sometimes God can be for you and also for someone else at the same time. We don't want that. We want it nice and clean. We want a stable triangle. For me and against them. Okay. Here's a scenario, spouse A and spouse B. One other thing I was going to say. If you were in a family where it seems like 2 people are getting along, and then they're fighting, then 2 other people are getting along, then they're fighting, and whoever's fighting is changing from day to day, week to week, it's probably because you have interlocking triangles, and some of them are unstable. So they're changing to stable triangles. And in doing so, they might actually change other triangles that were stable and now become unstable. So there's like a duck, duck, goose experience where some people are getting along and then they're not. Just the flavor of the week for that family. Okay, spouse A and spouse B. Spouse A and spouse B start to experience some tension in their relationship. So spouse B goes to talk to their parent, which is what should happen, right? They go and talk to their parent about what's going on. Parent B says, your spouse did what? They treated you how? They should not be doing that. And all of a sudden, we've created a stable triangle. Do we see that? Spouse B, parent of B get along, and they have a common enemy, which is spouse A. We're on board with this? Yeah? Okay. Spouse A also has access to their parent. Well, if you talk to your parent, I'm going to talk to my parent. Go to talk to my parent about what happened. They treated you how? That was so rude. They should not treat you that way. And all of a sudden, now there's another stable triangle where spouse A and parent of A have a common enemy, spouse B. And probably parent of A has the cell phone number or Facebook friends with parent of B. You might make some comments or not want to talk with them. So all of these triangles right here are stable. You see this? On the bottom left, we have parent of A, spouse A have a common enemy, spouse B. On the bottom right, parent of B, spouse B have a common enemy, spouse A. And the upper right, we have parent of A, parent of B, and spouse B. Spouse B and parent of B have a common enemy, which is parent of A. And the top left, parent of A, spouse A have a common enemy, parent of B. So it's divided along family lines right now, right? Let's say spouse A and spouse B decide to work things out, or they go see a therapist, and they repair their relationship. When they repair their relationship, this one leg of the triangle actually changes 2 triangles at the exact same time. Because now the triangle between parent of B, spouse B, and spouse A, that's the bottom right, this is now an unstable triangle where spouse B is trying to maintain a good relationship with their spouse as well as their parent. Likewise, the triangle in the bottom left, spouse A is trying to maintain a good relationship with spouse B and parent of A. So now there's 2 stable triangles and 2 unstable triangles. Why is this important? This is important because we can track the changes in the family and understand why families arrive at the current status quo that they're at. So let's say spouse B, spouse A repair their relationship, and spouse B gets upset with their parent saying, look, why are you still holding a grudge against them? We've gotten over that. You need to also. Parent of B is like, well, you came to talk to me. I was like a shoulder to cry on. Like, I care about you and your relationship. Well, back off. This is our business, not yours. And parent of B says, well, it's my son or my daughter, so it's my business. Like, okay. So now, both spouses are frustrated with parent of B. This has become a stable triangle on the bottom right. The spouses are getting along, and they have a common enemy, parent of B. And let's say parent of A is coming over for Christmas, and spouse A is like, look, I know I told you about what's going on with my partner, but we resolved it. We're all adults here. Can you just let it go? It's not even your issue to begin with. So parent of A is like, you know what? You're right. We're all adults. You're right. I can get over this. I trust you, and if you worked it out, good for you. So there's a change in the relationship between parent of A and spouse B. Just be patient. Sometimes relationships don't change automatically. It takes a little bit of time to do so. There we go. Oh. So now we have 4 stable triangles again. The one on the bottom left is stable, everyone gets along. The one on the bottom right, we have a common enemy, parent of B. The one on the top right, we have a common enemy, parent of B. And the one on the top left also have a common enemy, parent of B. And now parent of B is upset that everyone's mad at them, when I was just trying to help. But now everyone in the family is mad at me. Why? This is so unfair. What could have prevented this? Any ideas? Don't go to your parents to talk about your problems. But even if you do, what could parent of B done? Accept the change and go, oh, sounds like you're having a hard time. What are you going to do about it? Right? This is your issue. I'm not in the marriage. What are you going to do about it? Instead of taking sides. When we take sides, we start to play with these triangles. We start to let people know, oh, I'm open to accept your hot potatoes. Instead of, whoa, whoa, whoa. It's not my hot potato. This is your hot potato. What are you going to do about it? Because now parent B is on the out. Frustrated they are not invited to Christmas, or when they come, everyone's frustrated with them, or they're cold, even though they're trying to be the best parent possible to listen and support. Sometimes the best thing you can do is not listen to all their stuff and not get involved in all their stuff. Sometimes having clear boundaries is actually the most healthy thing for you and for them as well. Okay. Let's talk about a large family estate near Houston, Texas. Anyone ever been to Houston before? A few people? Okay. I know it's an up-and-coming city, right? There's this family near Houston. Every behavior is a symptom of the system, so when we think about these triangles, there are reasons why these behaviors are in place. So we have, in this Houston family estate, we have the parents on the top right, 2 biological parents. We have like an aunt and uncle that live nearby that are part of this on this little compound. We have a young cousin family that's also there on the bottom left. And then we have like a 10-year-old and a 15-year-old, and they're playing and they're loud and they have balloons, all age appropriate, but sometimes kids are loud, right? So sometimes they're not being seen as playful, sometimes they're seen as rambunctious. We gotta calm them down. Depending on who's present in the house, there's different responses to the kids. Sometimes it's joyous, sometimes it's just loud, and a little bit too overwhelming. So what happens, there are 4 interlocking triangles. We see that? And in this Houston family estate, sometimes there's frustration towards the kid or the teenager. Sometimes between the aunt and uncle, not all the way. Sometimes it's between the parents and the kids. But now there's some tension here. We see started some of the tension in the family. And maybe there's tension between, oh, whoa, I don't know what happened. Can we go back 3 or 4 slides, please, manually? Full slides. Keep going back. There we go. Sometimes it's unclear who's in charge of the house. Whose house is it? Well, it's the family's house. So do we all have to make decisions about who comes over? Or can just one person invite some friends over? Do we have to get the okay from everyone else at the house? Like, there is some questions about who's responsible for inviting guests over. Maybe there's one group who's like trying to closely monitor the temperature or what we eat. And so it's unclear about like, are we getting along? Or are there groups of people in this Houston estate that's making it a little bit more challenging? Because in this situation, maybe there's a common enemy, and this might change from day to day or week to week, depending on the temperature of this house. I'm guessing most of us have heard about the 4 different parenting styles. We have permissive, which anything goes. The parents say, whatever you want to do, that's great. So that's high responsiveness, see the arrow right there, high responsiveness, and low demand. Like, you can do whatever you want, I'm not going to demand anything from you, there's no boundaries. On the bottom left, there's neglectful. So parents who do not respond to their kids, and they don't demand anything. On the bottom right, there's authoritarian, meaning there's low responsiveness, but a high demand. So this is parents placing and forcing rules on the children. Strict punishments, it's a one-way conversation. That's my way or the highway sort of parenting. On the upper right, we have authoritative, which is different from authoritarian. Authoritative is both responsive and some demands. So yes, there are rules and boundaries in place, but there's a conversation between the parents and the kids to figure out how do we work this together. There's some sort of mutual symbiosis in that relationship. So there are consequences, but they're natural consequences. They're not arbitrary, and we talk about what's happening. And what is normal and expected in the family is this. It's developmentally normal for younger kids to be concerned with correctly following the rules. That's normal. Younger kids want to learn what the rules are, and they actually try and get their friends to follow those rules as well. We have little enforcers going around. You shouldn't be doing that. You're not allowed to do that sort of thing. It's normal for kids to want to learn the rules and try and enforce them. It's also developmentally normal for youth to challenge the arbitrary rules and boundaries. That's also developmentally normal, right? Just like it's developmentally normal for young adults to find a place or a plaque. There should be, who made this slide? We got to talk to this individual, right? Got to put it at the end. To find a place where they have a voice and belong. So young adults usually seek a place where they have a voice at the table. All of these are developmentally normal at different life stages. Are we on board with this? But it's difficult when we transition, when these kids transition from life stage to life stage, because the parents or the adults were trying to like teach the rules. You gotta learn the rules. Now we learn the rules. Oh, now you're challenging the rules. Okay, great. Well, these seem arbitrary, but these rules are in place for this reason, this reason. Oh, now you want a voice at the table. So it's a change for the adults in this compound. It can be challenging sometimes because these kids sometimes grow up pretty quick. This is something called a circumplex model, and I think this is on the back side of your handouts. Do we see it there? Yes. Yeah, okay. This is talking about family cohesion, how close the family is emotionally, and then flexibly, like the flexibility of the family to respond to challenges that the family experiences or challenges in society. So this is a typology, an organization of different ways that families can be. On the far left-hand side, to the top left-hand side, that's a low level of cohesion. That means they're not emotionally connected. And a high degree of flexibility means there's not a lot of rules. The top left means they're chaotically engaged, meaning we're not emotionally connected and the family does whatever they want. This is obviously not a healthy family, right? There's a lot of chaos here. On the very bottom left, we have low flexibility, so there's a lot of rules and regulations, but there's still not very much emotional connection. So there's a whole laundry list of rules, but no real emotional connection. So rigidly disengaged. This is also not a healthy family. At the bottom right, we have rigidly enmeshed, meaning we have low flexibility, so a lot of different rules, but a lot of emotional connectedness. We'd probably call this fused or enmeshed. We're too closely linked with one another with a whole bunch of rules. This rigidly enmeshed family is also not a healthy family. Similarly, on the top right, chaotically enmeshed means that there's high flexibility, so not a lot of rules, but we're emotionally enmeshed with one another, so we all get upset even though there's no structure in place. All of the corners are not healthy families. We on board with that? But they're all not healthy in different ways. What we're looking for is a little bit more balanced. So the inner circle, so maybe flexibly separated, so we have some flexibility, but we have some connection, but not too much. Maybe we're flexibly connected. I like that one, where there are some rules and expectations, but there's also this emotional engagement in a healthy way. Or structurally connected. Maybe we're not quite as close emotionally, but we have some rules in place, but they're not too rigid. We can bend a little bit. We bend, we don't break. Maybe structurally separated, where we do have some rules, and we're not too close, maybe because we don't know very well how to navigate the emotional relationships, but there's some balance between the cohesion and the flexibility. These will be healthy families. This family in Texas, in Houston, Texas, I don't know where they're at on here. I just know they're having some challenges, because what happens is the teenagers start to challenge the rules and boundaries, and the teenagers, if they feel like they don't have a voice at the table, they will start spending more time at other friends' houses. If they don't like the tension that's at home, maybe they're met with authoritarian versus authoritative responses. And when that happens, the tension between the adults makes the home environment for the teenager unpleasant. So the teenager will spend more time away from home instead of bringing their friends to the home. I'll say it again. The teenager, because of the tension at home, will spend more time away from the tension and will spend more time at other people's houses instead of bringing their friends home, because they don't want to bring their friends back into the house because of the tension. How are we feeling about this? Yeah? Okay. And if the teenagers are leaving, this creates a pattern. Now the kids are going to see the teenagers. Oh, the teenagers are leaving. They're going to other houses. Maybe that's what's expected of me. When we get older, we go to other houses, because that's what the kids do. So the younger kids are watching the older kids leave the house. This becomes the norm. So maybe this younger cousin family, which has been observing all this happen, is like, man, what are we supposed to do about this? Because I want to make sure there's a safe place for our kids, but I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to add more tension, but I feel like there's all this tension happening around us. I'm not sure exactly how to navigate this. And the aunt and uncle don't really want to live in a daycare setting, right, with all these kids around. So in some ways, it's nice that these teenagers are going to other houses, because they don't have to deal with their rebellious teenager phase, right? And we can do things the way we want to do them. Because what about space for adults? There needs to be space for adults and space for kids in the family compound. That can be a challenging boundary to negotiate. So what do you think is going to happen to the Houston family? Any ideas? What's going to happen if this continues? What's going to happen to the Houston family? What? A broken family, what do you mean?
Well, if the tension continues, everybody's going to go.
If the tension continues, everyone's going to either go part ways geographically, or they might be in the same house but be distant emotionally.
So there's tension that goes into the family. Eventually, it's going to break up the whole.
If there's tension within the family and it's stuck in the family systems, eventually that tension is going to spread, so it's too much for other people to also manage, and it could potentially put the cohesiveness of the family in jeopardy if things don't change. On one hand, it's nice the teenagers, the rebellious teenagers, are at someone else's house. We don't have to deal with them. On the other hand, if they were here, we could meet their friends and have a little bit more oversight into what's happening in their lives. That's actually a good thing, even though you have to deal with their pushback, with their protesting. But it's also sad when they're gone, because then we miss the opportunity for them to share some of their passions, their energy, their ideas. Maybe they'll know how to help cook once in a while. So we're missing out on some of this whenever the teenagers are only spending time away from the family. And if the family can't handle this normal resistance from the youth, find ways to be flexible. And if they can't find ways to resolve the tension with one another, that tension is not going to automatically disappear. It's just going to be redistributed and shoveled around the family. And it could cause damage to the family. So I think your prediction is right on, yes?
What if, even though you try to work with the family members, or you try to get in so much, that eventually still that person decides to leave, no matter what, because they already have that,
Let me see if I even understand it. So even if I'm trying to repair the relationship, the other person may still decide that they do not want to engage in this reparative process. They may decide to leave, and we are not the boss of them. We're only the boss of ourselves on the good days, right? We can't control other people. We can barely control ourselves on a good day. So sometimes this happens. Absolutely, sometimes this happens. Would you be surprised if I said this story may actually be about Hayward SDA Church? And not necessarily about this family in Houston. Would this be a big surprise to you? It could be in every single, not just this church, it could be in lots of churches. I was talking with Elder Nelson before the church service today, and I was asking what he likes about this church. He talked about how he moved nearby and he decided to check out this church because there's a lot of people who travel long distances passing many other churches to get to their home church. He decided to try out this church many years ago, decided he liked it, asked him what he's liked about the church, and he said, well, I like the people. And then he said something like, it's not that every church is the same, but a lot of churches deal with the same stuff. A lot of families deal with the same stuff. It might be a little bit different from other families, but every family experiences some sort of tension, just like every church experiences their own type of tension. So I'm not just singling out Hayward SDA, but maybe some of this might be resonant of what might be happening at Hayward SDA. And I know that COVID hit at a challenging time, and I'm guessing church life, I'll say post-COVID, is different from church life pre-COVID, right? I'm guessing there's less members who are participating on a weekly basis. There might be more tension now because, not that there wasn't tension before, but we haven't been able to meet together on a regular basis to have this emotional connection, so some of the theological or practical differences that could have been massaged by emotional connection weren't massaged because we're meeting together. And then we see each other, and then we have to relearn how do we talk with one another? This is a little bit awkward. We're re-meeting these family members after a while, and I've changed a little bit, you've changed a little bit, and trying to navigate this space, this can be challenging. So for those of you who have institutional memory, what was it like when Hayward SDA had more youth and young adults, like in spades? So it had more youth and young adults. For those of you who have been here for a while, what kind of institutional memory, what was it like when there were more youth and young adults here in this Houston compound? What do you mean they were more united? Get the microphone over there so we can hear. There was more, they were getting together more often to do things? What do you mean by doing activities?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was loud enough, Pastor. In other words, over the years, it seems that there's more distractions, of course, we know in the world. And, I mean, they're good kids, at least the kids that I know, they have hearts of gold. But they are not using, or maybe they are using their talents outside, but we would see it more, because I would see more activity in the church, more unity, even together with the families. It didn't have to be just the youth. This church, as far as I've known, has always been very family, united, or very, it doesn't have to be just the youth. We would have little kids and big kids, even if it was a youth program. Maybe they saw the youth in our hearts. We would support them and be there for them. But maybe COVID, for some whatever reason, also people found other ways. And I know the church is in our hearts, but we also have a church to be united and support each other, right? And a lot of times we'll stay home, and I think as humans, we think, oh, that's okay. I can stay in my pajamas, and be home. To me,
A lot more
I
comfortable.
always tell the kids, I go, the enemy makes good things and bad things look almost the same, where you can't tell. And I'm not saying it's bad, but I always tell them, put God first. Everything you do is good, as long as God is your first thought, your first, thank you, Jesus, for another day of life, and what can I do for you today? You know, so I just see it kind of broke up a unity. And yeah, I'm sure COVID has something to do with it. You know, we just didn't come back to be face to face. I'm old school, so I'd rather go pay my bill in person than do it online. Do it online, which my nieces know I'm challenged that way. But we need face on face.
Yeah.
You know, and I'll truly always believe that there's a lot of good in electronics and things if you do it good. But there's always a culture that takes it another way, and maybe that's tempting.
Yeah. We have a hand over here as well. And as you're walking over here with the microphone, after potluck, I saw lots of kids running around having a good time. We don't want to lose these kids, right? Which means we need to make sure they have a voice. We need to make sure they're able to challenge the rules and have conversations and not get punished for protesting or challenging the rules. Like, you're part of this family. We want them to stay here to invite their friends here instead of them say, oh, there's too much tension. I better go to someone else's house where there's less tension and we don't actually get to benefit and see the excitement and the energy and the passion and their skills, et cetera, et cetera. Over here.
There was, at one point, shortly before, or sometime prior to COVID, where there was increasing tension between leadership and the youth groups, where the youth groups were wanting to be more active in the services.
So like what you were talking about, more activities.
More activities, and the tension was rising so much that several of the teenagers who were becoming young adults actually stopped coming to
Because of the
church.
tension.
Because of the tension, yes.
That's unfortunate. That's hard. It's hard when we have to balance preserving certain ways of doing things and then other people wanting to have more space to share, and it's hard when we have to sacrifice one of those. Ouch. Okay. I think there's a hand back there. It might be a hand here.
Back when I first came, 1975, we didn't just have the AY and stuff like that, but we did family nights.
Okay.
We had Friday nights that we invited people to come for Vespers, and we encouraged the kids. We had Pathfinders. I mean, we did things with our kids. We did things as a church family. Now, they weren't perfect. When I came here, my thought was, I'm here not for the people. I'm here to learn about God. But the bonus was that no matter how bad things would get, we banded together as a church. We wanted to make things better, and we tried to listen. We didn't just let things blow up. We tried to struggle and get through them and make it work. When I came, I mean, we did a lot with the kids, and we did include them. And I think that as time goes on and the world changes, and computers, sometimes it's harder with kids because adults, I'm here to tell you, all that computer stuff, electronics, I don't know how to get into that.
A different world.
Yeah, it's a totally different world. I prefer one-on-one with people. I'd rather play board games. I don't want to do things on computers, and I think that we need to find, I think that it's not, maybe we're not finding ways to engage the kids. We're not finding ways that they can relate to, that we can try to pick up and learn.
But we're going to need that, right?
Oh.
But that might increase tension, though, right? We have to figure out a way to say, tension is normal. We have a hand, yeah. Tension is normal, and sometimes tension and conflict are healthy, right? We can grow from that. The goal is not to avoid conflict and avoid tension. We have to be able to be a little more comfortable sitting with it to make sure everyone has a voice. Yes?
I don't have anything negative to say, but I do want to say that we attended a different church. And then when we found the need to find a new home church, we had come to this church many years ago with a program called BITS. And we worked with this church with that program to teach we would teach the Bible workers on how to teach Bible study to new believers. Well, the program is no longer in existence in California that I'm aware of, but it left. But one thing that we remembered about this church was that the community here, everyone was like family, and they had a lot of activities going on. The kids were very involved. And if you stayed here 2 weeks, you will know I talk a lot and I have all these stories and things that I tell. And I remember being here before we came back to this church, that a couple of the teenagers approached me and said, "Hey, I heard you tell this story. You need to come to Vespers and tell that." And I'm like, "Really?" And I'm thinking, these kids want to hear what I have to say? Really? And so we were really impressed. And when we were in need of finding a new home church, this was the first place we thought of. And we brought our daughter here, and she tends to blend in. As you see, she's not in here. She's very happy here. And she's always ready to go when we're coming here because she loves it here. And we love it here. And that's all I wanted to say, is that it's like family, and I love the fact that Pastor has brought back family night. I don't know when the next one is going to be, but we really enjoyed that, and it's just family and community, and that's what we really enjoy so much about this church, and that's
But if there are any changes that need to be made, it's Pastor Tyler's responsibility, right? 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 He's in charge of making all the changes and following through and programming and cleaning up and making sure it all happens, right? Right? He only works 1 day a week, right? It's not his responsibility. The family collectively in this Houston compound needs to work together if this is going to happen, right? We need to collectively take responsibility. If there is tension, which is normal, developmentally normal, tension that's happening, we don't want to step in to solve the problems, but we might need to speak up. Hey, we don't want to lose these young kids, right? We don't want to use the youth. We don't want to lose the youth. Hey, we want to do more activities, even though not everyone may want to, but we want to provide that for those who want to. So we have to be okay with some tension. So can there be space for more open-mindedness, willingness to be more flexible, supportive of differences? And I encourage you to think of this not right versus wrong, because when it's an issue of right versus wrong, people tend to want to defend their right against someone else's wrong. Instead, maybe there are just differences, and I don't prefer yours. It's not right and wrong, it's just different and I don't like it. And it's a much different conversation when it's different and I don't like it. Like, do you want mushrooms on your pizza or onions? Well, I don't want onions. And personally, I think we can all agree that onions on pizza is terrible. But if you want onions in your pizza, like, okay, I just won't have your pizza, but I can have my mushrooms or my olives. But it's not a moral issue, right versus wrong. It's just different ways of doing it. If we can see it as different and not a right versus wrong, then hopefully we will not be as entrenched in our positions and needing to defend something. So looking at this Hayward SDA family state, so how can we disrupt these patterns? How can we create more flexibility and space for everyone? How can we address unresolved tension amongst the church leadership? Because that's one of the big issues. How can we address the unresolved tension that still might be present or may have been exacerbated, amplified because of COVID?
And I got baptized in 2021 outside. Pastor Tyler was not here. So what I do need to say is that, having to be in a new church for Pastor Tyler and not having a lot of people was a big job. And knowing this whole thing, we need to give everyone here, we have different ideas.
Yeah.
Okay? And we need to speak about them, talk about it, and let our issues or whatever's bothering us go directly to the pastor.
Is that what you want, Tyler? You want everyone to bring their issues to you?
Don't go to everybody, because by the end when it gets to pastor's ears, everything has changed. So I think he's taking a big job on this. For us to be a congregation, we need to unite and we need to come with ideas together.
Yes, but I want to challenge the idea that whenever you have a problem with someone else at church, you have supposed to go to Pastor Tyler, right? That's a very indirect way of doing it. He's going to get thousands of pounds of potatoes running at him. It's not his job. In fact, we should be thinking about more direct ways of handling it. I'm going to move forward because of time, but I want to be clear about the cost. The cost, if we can't change the way that we respond to one another, we can't change the way the tension is potentially in this church family, we might have the cost of individuals wanting to leave. And we don't want that. Okay. All right, we're going to keep moving on. We're going to talk about triangles, and then we will be done. Let's look at this family, this is the last section of this. So here's Leah, Jacob, Rachel, Leah's sons, and Joseph. Let's look at the triangles in this family. Lots of moving parts. Jacob and Rachel, obviously Rachel is his preferred wife. And there's tension between Leah and Jacob. And there's tension between Leah and Rachel. Is this a stable or unstable triangle? Stable. Oh, I love hearing that. Absolutely, there's a common enemy, right? Leah. Right? This is a stable triangle. Jacob likes Joseph, no? Yeah? Special treatment. And Rachel and Joseph probably get along. This is also a stable triangle. Right? We know that there's tension between the sons and Joseph, right? And I'm pretty sure that Leah gets along with her sons. We know there's tension between Leah and Joseph because of the way the sons are treating Joseph. And we know there's tension between Leah's sons and Jacob. And it would make sense that Leah's sons would also have some tension with Rachel, which is the preferred wife of their father. So every single triangle here is stable. A lot of dysfunction, but stable. And stable triangles want to stay. That's right. They resist change. Doesn't mean they can't change, but they're more resistant to change. So we can see right down here, down the line, between the two different sides of the family, it's stuck. It's stuck. So, a couple things happen in this family, right? Rachel gives birth to Benjamin, and Rachel passes away. But the tension with Rachel, does that disappear with her? No, good. It just gets redistributed amongst the rest of the remaining family members. In fact, I think this is partly the reason why later on Leah's sons try and take some of this unresolved tension into their own hand to get rid of their brother Joseph. That's another solution. This family likes to do that. Let's kick Joseph out. So now it's just Benjamin. But something has changed between here and later on in the story when all of the sons tear their clothes in grief to protect their brother Benjamin and go back down to Egypt with him, instead of allowing the viceroy of Egypt, which is Joseph, they didn't know it was Joseph, to take Benjamin away from them. So something has happened in this family, and here's my best guess. I don't know for sure, but here's my best guess. All of these are stable triangles right now. But we know that Jacob requested that he get buried with Leah, not Rachel. So something has happened after Rachel passed away. I'm guessing there's some repairing of the relationship that happened between Leah and Jacob, and in doing so, that would change these stable triangles into some unstable triangles. I'm guessing, well, I don't know, there's no mention in the Bible of Benjamin receiving a coat of many colors, of having dreams saying people are going to bow down to him, of tattletaling on his brothers. He's not as separate from his brothers as Joseph was. So I wonder if there's some softening of hearts towards Benjamin, who no longer has a biological mother, and in doing so, maybe there's some repairing of the relationship between Leah's sons and Jacob, and when you go down the line, all of a sudden these stable triangles become unstable, and unstable triangles want to change, so now there's pressure here for other people to repair their relationships, because we know it later on in Genesis, Leah's sons don't want to lose Benjamin. Before, they might have been interested in that. But now they don't want it. So there's been a shift in the family system, and it may look like this. So even though we're talking about stable and unstable triangles, it does not mean the triangles cannot change, or they're going to change. It just means that they're more likely to be open to it, they're seeking change, or they don't want any change. They're resistant to it. So let's talk about what we can do. Bryan, you've been talking a lot about triangles, theoretically about triangles, you talked about concepts. What can we do practically? Boots on the ground. What can I do today to change the way I interact in triangles? And the first thing is your mindset. Changing your mindset, knowing that triangles exist, and knowing that you are likely to catch other people's anxiety, and the people are going to come to you with hot potatoes. You don't know when, but you know that they will. And when this happens, when you get an opportunity to get roped into someone else's triangles, I want to make sure you can de-triangulate yourself. And that doesn't mean you are escaping the triangle. We are always going to be in triangles, but you do not have to be an active and willing participant in these triangles. So before you say or do anything, here's what I'm recommending. Remember that you may be absorbing anxiety from them. You might be catching their anxiety that was not yours to begin with. You might already be catching, like, before they came into the room, were you anxious? Or is it only when they came into the room and started talking, and that's when you started to get anxious? Or maybe you saw the number on the phone, oh no, Mary's calling me. Oh boy, now I'm starting to get anxious just thinking about picking up this phone. You're catching their anxiety. And it may not be your unresolved tension, it's theirs, but it resonates with you and it's unpleasant. So, when you suspect that what they're sharing is not your problem, then when you know the anxiety does not belong to you, you do not have to participate. In fact, the two best, this is my daughter Phoenix, she did not like diaper changes before. So we're getting ready to diaper time. Here we go. So the two immediate questions to ask yourself. Is this my problem? Is this my anxiety? Or am I catching it? If you can do these two things, there's two more things on the next slide, but these two things are the foundation of you not getting roped into other people's anxiety. Is this my problem? Or is it their problem? Is it my anxiety or am I catching their anxiety? This is a very important distinction to make. Because if it's not your problem, you might get roped into dealing with everybody else's problems. Doesn't mean you abandon them. We'll talk about it in a little bit. But you may not be responsible for fixing it. If you have people that you're a caregiver for, you might have some responsibility, right? But even them, you can challenge them to take care of their needs. Now, different people have different support needs, and being aware of those support needs is very important. But is this my problem, is this my anxiety? Those are the first two important questions. Then, after that, two important tasks. Sketch out the triangle, draw it out. What are the parties at play? See if there's a stable triangle or an unstable triangle. If it's a stable triangle, you might go, that's why we feel so stuck. That's why it's hard to make a change. It's not just the people in it. The triangle is resisting change. And now I know why. Here's what needs to happen. But I'm not in charge of them. I'm only in charge of myself, right? I'm only in charge of myself. So I need to be careful about not overstepping my bounds, saying, you need to do this to solve the triangle so I feel better. It's not about making yourself feel better, but understanding what's happening. Or maybe the triangle is unstable, and you might be going, oh, it's unstable triangle. The unstable triangle is seeking change, and that's why it feels so awkward and uncomfortable. It's not about the people, it's about the triangle itself. This makes sense. Okay. Well, I don't want to sacrifice my own values. I don't want to sacrifice my relationships, but this just makes sense. This is why I'm experiencing some tension, not just because of the people in it, but because the triangle is unstable. And then make a lesson plan. What do I mean? I mean, write out what you want to do. Because if you're in this triangle and you're part of this triangle, I'm guessing you will be activated in this triangle sooner or later. Today, tomorrow, next week, next month, holiday season. Sketch out the triangle. Decide what you want to do. Really be clear in your mind, whether it's your anxiety and your problem, and then you can do something like this. Set some boundaries and move to the outside position, saying things like, okay, I know what's happening here. They're going to try and rope me into their problem, but it's their problem. I know that. And I have the tendency to catch their anxiety, but I know it's not my anxiety, it's their anxiety. So I'm going to remain neutral. In fact, when they bring their anxiety as their +1, I'm not going to amplify it. Whew, I'm going to be cool, calm, collected. So when they come, oh boy, I'm going to take care of myself. Hopefully be a non-anxious presence as much as possible and not catch or amplify their anxiety. Oh, but I know that does not work. So I'm the anxiety dampener. I'm going to be in the outside position and recognize that the triangle is stable or unstable, and that's why I'm feeling all of these feelings, and that's why this is so difficult. But I definitely don't want to do what I have been doing in the past, because that does not get me where I want to go. And from a neutral, this is the gold nugget. This is why I came here today. From a neutral, yet encouraging stance, I want you to use second person singular or second person plural language. You. You should use the word you. It's going to go like this. So, what are you going to do about it? What do you think needs to happen next? This is so important because you're sending the message that you believe that they might have some capacity for handling the problem themselves. You're not rejecting them. You're not abandoning them. You're not kicking them out in the cold. But you're using the second person plural or second person plural language, you, so that they are thinking about them doing it. This is so important. It might be like this. Oh, that sounds hard. But I also know you're resourceful. I bet you can figure out a creative way through this. What do you think is the first step? Notice how you're not catching their anxiety. You're not making their problem your problem. You're sending the message, I'm here, but this is yours to handle. What's the first step? And just having the safe space, the secure haven for them to come to you with their problem and then slow down and think it through, you might be really surprised at the cool ideas they come up with to solve their own problems. Well, I know you're capable of taking a course of action which will ultimately be in your best interest. What do you think that looks like for you? What do you think you need? Notice it's their responsibility, not yours. Or maybe it's a couple that comes to you. I'm sorry you're in this difficult situation, but I'm also confident that you two can find a way to come to a resolution. What do you think you need to get there? I'm not abandoning them. I'm letting them know I believe they can solve their own problems. Now, I recognize some of us might come from different cultures where we cannot do this. We might have to use we. What can we do to help you, right? You can say the word we, but mean the word you. Say the word we, but mean the word you. So when they come to you with some stuff that is their problem, and they're coming with their anxiety, you can imagine there's a bowl in front of you, and you imagine your hands are up like this, and when they're sharing things like, I need help with this, and this isn't working out right, you go, okay, and everything they're saying, it's bouncing off your hands, boop, into a bowl, boop, into the bowl. It's not your stuff. You're not going to absorb it, boop, into the bowl. And you might have to say, okay, all right, what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do? But you're actually meaning, what are you going to do about it, right? So, okay, what do we need to do? What is the first step? You're saying we, but you're meaning you, so that they can start to take some responsibility. I don't know what to do, Brian. I'm not sure. That's why I came to you. Okay. Sounds like the first thing we need to do is just take a breath. Okay. But okay. I hear you. Let's just, okay. Take a breath. All right. I'm here. What do we need to do? What do you need to do? What's the first step? Well, I've thought about this, so you've already thought about some ideas. Interesting. What else do you think you need? Oh, now I've shifted to second person language, right? I'm really putting it back on them. And this is super powerful. It's also subtle, but it's powerful because the more this happens, the more they're going to come to you. You're going to allow them and empower them to solve their problems. And if this keeps happening over and over, eventually they're going to pick up the phone to call Brian and go, hold on a second. What would I do if Brian was here? Okay, think about what I need. All of a sudden, you're working yourself out of a job. That's what we want. We want them to struggle. You'll be there to support them, but we want them to work on their own stuff. Now, issues of safety or well-being, you might have to step in to help, right? I don't want you to be a cold-hearted robot. But the more you can do this, the more you will teach people in your lives you are not willing to take their hot potatoes whenever they want you to. You're not willing to take their shoveled snow, just like you're not willing to shovel snow over onto their driveway. And all of a sudden, people slowly in the system start to take responsibility for their own hot potatoes instead of shoveling those hot potatoes onto other people. So, if you're able to do this, you're able to have a better perspective because you're not roped into the push or the pull of their challenges, and you can still act in accordance with your values. And when you can act in accordance with your values, then you're not sacrificing your own well-being for the harmony of the relationship. So you don't react to their anxiety. Instead, you respond in accordance with your values. And if you're able to do that, there might be something else that's at stake for them, but we don't know what that is. They're upset about so-and-so, but what's really at stake behind the scenes? And you can't even begin to think about that if you're caught up in their anxiety. So, remaining on the outside, remaining calm, this is important for changing the system. And the last thing I want to show you today is right here. It's a comic, the top left. I finally found it after 15 years, on the top right. The Scroll of Truth, the bottom left. You're catching their anxiety if you're solving their problem. I don't like that, but it's true. If you find yourself solving their problem, it's because you've already caught their anxiety. So, 2 questions. Is it my anxiety? Is it my problem? And then draw out a triangle and make a lesson plan. All right, opportunity for some questions. I have a QR code here and also on the back of your handouts. If you want to use your smartphones, I'd be very interested in hearing anonymous feedback so I can improve this seminar. I do this about once a month. I travel around to churches, so I'd love to hear your feedback. So it's here as well as on the back of your handout. Now it's time for Q&A. We officially have 5 more minutes. I will stay a little bit longer after that, but I'm open to fielding questions if people want to raise them. Yes?
Really happy you brought this up because there's so much, I put this in like my work area because there's so much tension to the point where I'm just like, I can't deal with this, I can't deal with the gossip, I can't deal with my attitude, admin, I'm doing my own work, and the conflict between favoritism and a person that does not go to her office to be talking about my whole life.
Yeah. If we have people going around gossiping, sharing stories about other people's business, if they come to you and say, wow, it sounds like you know a lot about their life. What are you going to do about it? What do you mean? I'm talking to you about it. Oh, okay. So why are you talking to me about it? Oh, because I'm going to let you know. Yeah, it's not my life. Okay, because she's trying to find a receptacle for her hot potatoes. If it's not a story, I need a target. I need to find someone to offload these hot potatoes onto. Whoa. You've... Yeah, having boundaries is healthy. Yeah, absolutely. Having clear boundaries so they know. Explicit boundaries, not implicit boundaries. Some people need like neon light, bright boundaries. And then they need to be reminded when they cross the boundaries. And that's okay. Different people need different support needs, and that's okay. Good, thank you. All right, any other questions? Yes? You get to eat your mints. Yes, you've been waiting for, what is it, like 4 hours. Yes, you can have your mints. Thank you. Okay? Other questions? I will be available for informal questions. You want to close out with prayer?
Well, did you enjoy the seminar? Can I give Dr. Cafferky a round of applause? Thank you so much, Bryan, for sharing with us. That was a lot of information, and but yeah, it was very helpful, very, very beneficial. So thank you so much for coming. Let's have a word of prayer. Lord God, we thank you so much for being a God that cares about us, that cares about the relationships that we have, the relationships that we struggle with. Lord, we thank you for being with us through the turmoil of life, through the ups and downs of our relationships with others. And Lord, I pray that your Spirit would continue to be with us. Help us to keep in mind and to put into practice some of the good information and advice that we've received from Dr. Cafferky. Help us to grow and deepen in our relationships with others. Help them to become less tangled and more beneficial, Lord. And most of all, keep us close to you. Keep us close in our relationship with you above all else. This is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, folks, thank you again for coming. And if you have something else you'd like to share with Dr. Cafferky before he leaves, please feel free to do so.